Hideo Kojima is possibly my favorite game director. His series Metal Gear Solid is my favorite video game series of all time, and the first Death Stranding game was nothing short of a masterpiece. It was beautiful and unique, with an interesting world, good narrative hooks, interesting gameplay that hadn't really been explored before. It was unlike anything that I had ever played up to that point. But Death Stranding 2 honestly sort of makes the first game feel like a proof of concept. It's not that the first game is bad in retrospect, but the sequel just upgrades so many of the systems from the first game. They don't even feel like upgrades, they feel as if this is what the game should have been all along. Present in some larger form, they've existed as idea, but the sequel materializes them in a concrete and interactable way. The story is fantastic as well, and while at points it does feel like we are essentially retreading ground from the first game, there's one, sort of a point to that, and two, in the places where Death Stranding 2 does separate itself from its predecessor, it is unlike anything Kojima has made before. The final few hours of this game is Kojima absolutely out-Kojimaing himself in a way I never thought possible. Gameplay and combat upgrades are fun and punchy. The new systems and item variety allow the player to experiment with a ton of different pieces of equipment and methods of approach. While the game can be a narrative story or a delivery simulator, it can also be a massive sandbox that allows the player a ton of agency to choose how they'd like to go about tasks. Death Stranding 2 combines all of these features together to create something entirely unique and new. It wraps up incredibly complex themes into subtle and not so subtle packages. The game deals with connection, the nuances in the different types of connections that we make, destiny, fate, grief and trauma, love and death. Death Stranding 2 doesn't try to shy away from these issues, but tackles them head on. At times, its exact meanings and standpoints can be obfuscated, but that leaves the game up to a lot of player interpretation. There are points in this very video where I will openly admit that I don't have all the answers and that I'm guessing as much as you are, but it's my personal interpretation. The best pieces of art reflect the person experiencing them. They are a mirror into someone. And in a lot of ways, Death Stranding 2 would not be possible without Kojima's career and his experience with the Metal Gear Solid series. This DNA is woven through the fabric of the game, and while these might seem like mere references, they are also seemingly recognized by the game and commented on directly. If Death Stranding was a testing robot meant to iron out the kinks and see what works, then Death Stranding 2 is the full release version, a humanoid machine punching and running and talking like a real person, a piece of machinery that is almost indistinguishable from the biological human form. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I'll be taking a look at Death Stranding 2, talking about gameplay, mechanics, story, and every fully functioning humanoid machine in between. If you're interested in other Kojima games like the Metal Gear series or my previous video on Death Stranding, you can go check those out here. If you enjoy the video and want to support the channel, consider liking the video and subscribing as it really helps me out, and it's also free. You can also now hype videos, which is a small button underneath the video, which helps the performance for the first week or so. It's me, your favorite son, and today I'd like to talk about Death Stranding 2. Development on Death Stranding 2 seemingly began shortly after the release date of the first game. This was, as is usual with Death Stranding information, leaked by Norman Reedus in an interview. The game was originally meant to be completed by 2023, but the pandemic of 2020 extended that date by quite a bit. Since the team couldn't go into the office, they couldn't cast new characters, couldn't scan people into the game, and Kojima himself had to work remote. Sony even gifted Kojima a large screen dedicated for video calling so that he could oversee the team from afar. This drastically affected the development of the game, not only because the pandemic had reflected a mirror version of the world from the first game, it affected Kojima himself. Much like everyone else around the world, Kojima wanted to get back to people, get back to connections. Being isolated made him crave the creative and collaborative atmosphere that was present during making the first game. Therefore, Death Stranding 2 was turned on its head, and it became about that in-person connection that he and his team needed during development. During COVID, Kojima also got very sick, assumingly with COVID itself. He also had trouble with his vision and got a quick eye surgery so that he could get back to work as soon as possible. This affected his vision even further and caused a lot of problems for him during development. Regardless of these hiccups, development moved on and Kojima collaborated with more people than ever this time around. Needing to find someone to fill the shoes that Low Roar had left after the tragic death of their lead singer, Kojima brought French chamber pop artist Yoann Lemoine, aka Woodkid, in to compose the game's soundtrack with Ludwig Forssell. Actors like Norman Reedus, Lea Seydoux, and Troy Baker would return to reprise their roles from the first game. Elle Fanning, Shioli Kutsuna, and Luca Marinelli are just a few of the actors, though, that would be brought in to fill out the cast. People like Yoji Shinkawa had returned as the art director. Kenji Yano and Shuyu Murata both returned as writers on the game, with new collaborator Kota Watanabe being listed in that department as well. The game itself was initially announced at the Game Awards 2022, where a brief trailer was shown. This was, of course, already spoiled again in 2022 by Norman Reedus when he told Leo that they had already started working on the second game. Kojima responded to this on Twitter, telling Norman to go to his private room. Reedus would later reveal that Kojima gave him a light lashing about this in private. The press for this game felt huge, though, with the actual release date being revealed at South by Southwest of all places, with Kojima and longtime friend Jeff Keighley doing a world tour with some of the actors and team members. At some point during development, though, the game was adjusted and shifted. This was revealed in an interview with Woodkid, where it was stated, "Kojima came to him and said, 'We have a problem. I'm going to be very honest. We have been testing the game with players, and the results are too good. They like it too much. That means something is wrong. We have to change something.'" This caused Kojima to take a pivot and change some things with the script. When this article came out, I saw a lot of people run with it, trying to twist this into a narrative that Kojima is creating shock value for the sake of it, or trying to subvert your expectations because it gets more press. I can only speculate, but I can't imagine that is not what this quote was intended to mean. It seems like Kojima didn't change the game because people liked it too much and he wanted to be on the fringe, so to speak. It seems like he was trying to make a point about getting comfortable with your art. This is something that I think is very important with the core of the game, so we'll get into that a little deeper later, but for now, just keep it in mind. Death Stranding 2 was officially released on June 26th, 2025 for the Sony PlayStation 5. Before we get into the game, I'd like to get a few notes out of the way. First of all, my intention with this video is to cover this game as comprehensively as I possibly can. Part of me wanted to save this video for a later date, specifically when the Death Stranding 2 novelization, written by Kenji Yano, aka Horito Nojima, is released. This is because the novelization for the first added a lot of context to that game. I eventually decided against it because it will be quite a long time before we get an English release of that book. There will be certain details and small pieces of information like that obviously won't be covered in this video, but the game itself, its features, its story and character, themes and ideas should ideally be entirely covered here. To that end, I will be using the game's story as a framing device. I will recap each episode, attempt to deconstruct it as thoroughly as I can, and also deep dive into different game mechanics as well. For a little bit of insight into the actual making of this video, I wrote all of the story deconstruction pieces first, and then went back through and inserted analysis of gameplay aside each episode that they complemented. This is specifically to address the inevitable comments that this video will be a generic recap of the story. This is not the goal of this video, though there will be a hefty amount of that because the game is so dense with plot and character that it will be necessary to bring you, the viewer, up to speed before beginning deconstruction of those same elements. Lastly, if you haven't played Death Stranding 2 thus far, I should have left you relatively unspoiled. I warn you before going any further. I would much rather lose a few views and leave your experience of this game unsullied than get extra views and possibly alter your experience of the game. I'm not exactly someone that places much weight into spoilers, but if that does affect your view of a piece of media, then you should immediately stop this video, play the game, and come back when you're done. I also should note that I will bring viewers up to speed on various plot elements from the previous game as they come up in the story, though this video does not feature a complete plot recap of Death Stranding. If you're interested in watching that before this video, I do have a Death Stranding video that you could check out. Otherwise, all of the information you'll need to understand this game will be provided here. Death Stranding 2 begins with a narration from a familiar character, Fragile. She's delivering her ode to the porters, a small speech about her admiration for the profession.
A glimpse of a life I've never known. They're my window, my sole connection to the outside world. And I know they'll be back again, today.
-61.
We then see shots of the new environment, mountains, landscapes, chiral creatures peeking their heads out from rocks, all backed by the beautiful -61 by Woodkid. This song itself was released in 2020, off of Woodkid's second full-length album, S16. Despite being released before the second game, the song's lyrics still happen to resonate with the story itself. Woodkid ponders about love, life, and whether he has ever really belonged anywhere. Verses are intercut with lyrics from the Suginami Junior Chorus in Japanese. Back and forth between Woodkid and the junior choir, the song ends with the children counting, seemingly randomly. This beautiful chanting feels almost rhythmic and sets the scene for our introduction to the game. This intro cutscene shows off exactly how much of an upgrade Death Stranding 2 is to the first game. When I originally saw this cutscene, first shown off at the South by Southwest presentation with Hideo Kojima, Woodkid, and members of the cast, I thought this was real footage for a moment. Certain shots give away its game world, but the environment just looks gorgeous all the time. Our camera pans forward and we see Sam taking a brief rest on the side of a mountain, the same position that Sam would rest in when taking a load off in the first game. Now, his original companion, Lou, has left the pod and is being carried in a baby Bjorn on his chest. Lou has grown quite a bit since exiting the pod 11 months ago, and now accompanies Sam on his journey. Sam makes his way across the mountains, and we're introduced to some new features that the game presents, but we'll get to those later. As the rain begins to fall, Sam encounters some BTs at the edge of a cliff. As he and Lou begin to make contact with them, we realize they are a hologram, made to prevent intruders from wandering into his home. Sam and Lou have been hiding out for 11 months in Mexico. They left the UCA to try and get away from Bridges since they are technically fugitives. Since Sam went and took Lou out of her pod, something that is completely against standard procedure, and absconded with a piece of Bridges' equipment, Lou herself, he has to stay out of sight. Back in their small Mexican shelter, we hear Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, the incredibly popular 1969 song performed by B.J. Thomas and written by Burt Bacharach and Hal David for the film Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. This song will be incredibly important for the overall game and its themes, so keep it in mind for now. We see small shots of the life that Sam and Lou have developed here. Lou has a large collection of toys. They've marked her height on the doorframe as she's grown, and Sam is seemingly domesticated, doing dishes for this two-person household. Outside, we see a massive BT whale off in the distance, and a character wielding a familiar umbrella arrives. If you've played the first game, you probably already know that this is Fragile, but the game still treats this as an intense sequence for those new to the series or those not paying close enough attention to notice. As Sam hears the alarm bells go off, he decides which defensive weapon to grab, shifting from a knife to a gun and eventually a pan, not wanting to kill the intruder for fear of a BT materializing. As Fragile is introduced, we finally get that Hideo Kojima credit that we see so rarely these days. Fragile has brought Sam some chiral printed diapers, and since she connected to his facility when entering, Sam is now on the network. This is clearly not something that Sam wanted, as he's been avoiding the grid for almost a year. Fragile also talks about the fact that she's been having trouble using her powers, jumping to the beach, basically the ability to teleport. But she's come down with something called jump shock, an affliction that comes from overusing her abilities, now preventing her from using these abilities reliably. But chiral printed diapers aren't the real reason that Fragile is here. Fragile has a job for Sam, and if he can complete it, his record with Bridges will be wiped clean. Lou is a different story though. Since she is technically Bridges' property, he'll have to work that out with them. The job isn't exactly simple though. Humanity is still on the brink of extinction, and since the last game, the UCA has changed. This was made clear at the ending of the first Death Stranding. We never stopped the extinction of the human race, just put it off. Bridges has withdrawn from the UCA, and Die Hardman is no longer president of the UCA. The UCA is now relying on automation to handle deliveries, specifically a system called APAS 4000. Human porters are no longer needed, and because of that, Fragile Express has gone under. But Fragile started a new group called Drawbridge that handles contracts outside of the UCA. The UCA has since given Drawbridge a task, though, to expand the chiral network into Mexico. Who better to do this than the porter that connected everyone in the first place? We can ask Fragile some questions this time around, as Death Stranding 2 has introduced dialogue options, but they are only used to get more optional information on certain topics, rather than affecting the overall story. Fragile tells Sam that BTs are still in Mexico, that the chiral contamination here is high, meaning that there's heavy timefall and natural disasters, and she elaborates on why it's important Sam completes this job. Deadman is running a research station in Mexico, and he has something he wants to talk to Sam about in person. It also just so happens that they've measured a large BT heading towards the area, and since Sam was the first person to kill a BT, he's the best person to defend the research station. Sam obviously has some reservations about this. Mainly he thinks that the UCA might just be trying to take control of Mexico by extending their territory south. Fragile dismisses this point pretty quickly though.
Like the internet before the Death Stranding. Public infrastructure to connect people. Which is why, instead of turning to an established government agency like Bridges, the UCA contracted a private organization, like ours, who then decided to employ the services of a freelancer like yourself.
This is the first of many comparisons that the game will make between the chiral network and the modern world internet. Though this is one of the only overt references the game makes, the other features of the chiral network will beg that comparison down the line. This was implied as well with the first game. Connecting players to each other and preppers to large way stations felt like connecting people to the internet. But now, with new story beats introduced, the chiral network basically is an allegory for the internet. It also carries other pieces of thematic weight, but it would be reckless to not note the direct comparison here. Sam eventually agrees to take the job and asks Fragile to take care of Lou while he's gone. Sam is clearly concerned about leaving Lou, but the trek is only a few days away. This ends the prologue and it begins the first episode of the game. This whole introduction sets the scene for the game, but it also brings in some clear comparison to the first entry, which Death Stranding 2 never shies away from. Sam is in a similar position, a reluctant protagonist that doesn't necessarily believe in the cause that he's fighting for. Sure, he believes that people need to be connected, but he isn't exactly out there championing the cause himself. Sam really just wants to be left alone, to raise Lou, to make a life for himself. At the core of this, though, Sam is afraid to lose a family he's made again, even one so small. And to go back to the song that played in the introduction, Sam is living on the outside. He's literally outside the chiral network. He doesn't really belong anywhere. He's a wanderer, just surviving on the outskirts, not necessarily a part of a group. The prologue is short, but effective at giving us a brief reintroduction to this world. We then begin episode 1, Sam. We are reintroduced to the basics of Death Stranding and its gameplay. Our ultimate goal is to get to the former geophysics research lab, the place where Deadman is waiting for him. Just like the first game, though, we have to connect the facilities on the way to the research lab, creating a sort of chiral chain down the continent. This area of Mexico, spoiler alert, will not be the main location that we'll spend most of Death Stranding 2 in. That location will come later, but Mexico basically serves the same purpose that the Eastern Coast does in the first Death Stranding. This area slowly integrates us into the game, gets us used to the mechanics of the game, and sets the story up for the twists and turns that will come later. It is a small playground where we're allowed to test out various parts of the game's systems, a microcosm of the later and much larger Australia that we'll spend most of our time in. There is a variety in the environment here, though, a small, dry plateau that we can easily see across, a broken and abandoned city occupied by bandits, a few rocky areas with settlements peppered throughout, some large valleys and rivers that will affect the routes we take through Mexico. On the way to the former geophysics research lab, we will need to stop at 3 other facilities, including 2 other optional facilities that we can choose to connect to the chiral network. As a brief reminder and primer, in the world of Death Stranding, the United States, or UCA, is connected through the chiral network. This is done with a small device called the Cupid that allows any facility to be connected to the others on the network. This gives facilities the ability to share data and information with each other, mainly developmental plans, research materials, etc. A lot of the first game was based on this type of research. We would meet a lot of people on the way that would be doing work into uncovering what happened with the Death Stranding, people developing new utilities that could help connect the country or keep them alive. Those types of people are still here this time around, but a lot of the preppers that we'll meet along the way are in need of general help rather than research materials. The first facility we travel to is C1, in need of connection to the chiral network so they can dispose of bodies that they've amassed from a recent uptick in people taking their own lives. Via Libre needs access to medical technologies to heal their people, and the C1 South Distribution Center needs chiral density gauges that have been stolen by nearby bandits to predict BT movements, allowing for safer deliveries in the area. This is done just as we did before, by physically making deliveries to these facilities. The core of Death Stranding 2 is much the same as the first game. We can take deliveries from different facilities, grabbing cargo and loading it onto our body in a carrier or on a vehicle. We then make our way across the terrain, trekking through the land and avoiding any obstacles that demand attention. Obstacles are one of the biggest parts of gameplay, though, because if they weren't there, we would just walk in a straight line to the objective. We will encounter mountains, timefall rain that damages our cargo, bandits that threaten to injure us and take away our cargo, BTs trying to touch Sam and cause a void out in the process. The list goes on and on. We use our Odra deck, just like in the first game, to sense the structure of the terrain, how uneven or treacherous it is. Carrying more cargo makes Sam more unstable and a bit harder to control. We can use a variety of different gear to make our way through treacherous terrain. Ladders that give us the ability to scale cliff sides or climb down into ravines. Bridges that allow us to cross great chasms or lakes. Climbing anchors that let Sam rappel down high mountains. Zip lines that can be set up to expedite deliveries. The list goes on and on. All of these structures are part of the chiral network of the actual game, though. This means that when we build a structure, that structure has a chance to pop up in another person's game. The same goes with our game, as we will see structures that other players have built as we make our way across the world. This was one of the largest features of the first game, and is just as present in the second entry. The first game was about connecting the UCA through the chiral network, giving people the ability to access information and other people, freeing them from the isolation of their shelters. But it was also about the connection that we, as a player, made with other players as we journeyed across the world. Connecting an area in the game to the chiral network also connected us to the chiral network and other players in turn. This isolated journey was not so isolated after all. We would see players' names pop up on their structures and could distribute likes, a sort of currency in the game world that couldn't actually be used to buy anything, but would at least reflect some sort of score of impact that the player had on the world. These systems are all still present. We can use other player-created vehicles from facilities, we can use their items like ladders and zip lines, we can follow their signs or directions, taking warning from the people that have come before us. But Death Stranding 2 is less about isolation and more about commenting on that connection that we created. How well we manage to secure our cargo during the delivery generally determines the score that we'll get on that delivery. There are other types of orders that we can accept, though they are much less frequent than the general deliver some cargo and make sure it's not broken by the time you get there type. We will be sent to retrieve cargo that was lost, retrieve cargo that was stolen, destroy dangerous cargo that is being held by bandits, or eliminate specific enemies, either human or BT. The bulk of this is the same as it was in the first game. These slow and meticulous journeys are the bulk of our playtime, making our way across the country either on foot or in a quick vehicle. Environment is doing the heavy lifting in the aesthetics department. As we journey across these lands, they are our distraction. They represent the art that we're looking at, the landscapes we admire, but also the platforms that we're metaphorically jumping on. Death Stranding 2 does what the first game did best, but even better. It relies on atmosphere and tone to carry the journey. The player is meant to bask in the world and take it in, to soak in their surroundings and get familiar with them. Each time a journey is made from one facility to the other, new avenues are found, different paths are trudged, and you either learn or create the most efficient way to that facility. This is variety in gameplay, but it's placing the responsibility on the player to find that variety. There are a lot of new things that Death Stranding 2 introduces in terms of gameplay. Most of these things are small changes, new equipment, quality of life changes, or tweaks in the way that gameplay works. But the sum of all these changes is what creates the avalanche from the snowball, but we'll talk about those in a moment. In Episode 1, Sam travels to these 3 facilities, gathering the necessary orders and delivering them. On the way, he stops in a private room, the place where we can adjust our appearance, customize our backpack, and recover stamina by drinking chiral tea now instead of Timefall Porter or Monster Energy. Sam connects via Libre and the distribution center to the chiral network and is awoken from a nap by a massive earthquake. BT activity has increased near the research facility that Deadman is waiting for us at. Sam has to head up, take out the BTs, or sneak around them. Sam can finally head up to connect the place and see what Deadman wanted to talk to him about. Sam arrives at the facility taking a shower and getting some rest in the private room, but that's when Deadman appears. He tries to embrace his friend, now rid of his aphanphasmophobia, but this is just a message left behind by Deadman. The station contained a ton of useful research information, specifically on the other side. The researchers here were attempting to make contact with the rest of the world, but a massive tar belt at the tip of South America and the thick layer of chiralium in the atmosphere prevented both on-land and by-air communication with the southern continent. Even ships sent across the ocean were sunk by the chiralium in the water. These researchers eventually found birds not native to the area, birds specifically from Australia. They found an anomaly that they called a plate gate. This anomaly appeared when Sam started expanding the network across North America and grew as the chiral network did. This plate gate was basically a portal directly to Australia. The UCA, of course, wants to connect Australia to the chiral network. Deadman has more to say, but he pauses the message to go take a shower, while Sam deals with the massive BT that's showed up outside. We now have a boss fight with a huge BT, the one originally threatening the research center. If you remember the first game correctly, this fight mirrors the first fight with a BT that we had near the end of the East Coast starting area. It's not the same type of BT though. This one resembles a massive head split down the center, writhing tentacles sprouted from the gash in its skull. Its main attack is to suck up the tar around it and shoot it back out at Sam. After defeating it, Sam can head back up and watch the rest of the message from Deadman. He He was looking into Bridge's records, and he found that BB-28, the designation that was given to Lou while it was still in a pod, was decommissioned years ago before Sam had even used it. When Deadman found the records of BB-28, he realized that it was a different child entirely, without the birthmark that Lou has. This means that Lou was given the designation after the original BB-28 was decommissioned. Lou was never officially recorded in the database, at least as far as we can see. This means that technically, Lou is not Bridge's property. This is good news because if a Bridge's property BB did grow outside of a pod, they would want to study it. Sam is now free to raise Lou himself without worrying about Bridges. Deadman then gives Sam some vaccines to administer to Lou as she grows up. He even offers Sam a small toy to make it easier on Lou. But Deadman has one last, final, shocking revelation. In the first game, when we were introduced to Deadman, we realized that he was effectively a Frankenstein's sort of monster. His organs are all taken from those of dead cadavers, and this originally led him to believe that he did not have a beach. Every person in the Death Stranding world has a beach that they go to when they die, but Deadman didn't have a beach, which therefore isolated him from the rest of humanity. He didn't have this shared afterlife experience that they did. Deadman spent his time at this research station looking into beaches and death and souls. He eventually realized that he does have a beach and bears his soul to Sam, his fears and revelations.
All the evidence you could ever wish for. Not enough to solve every mystery, perhaps, but enough for me to make an incredible personal discovery that I have a beach after all. It doesn't matter how I was born. I have lived as a human. And thus do I possess a beach like any other. I am not a machine, but a person with a ha and a ka and a beach to go with them.
Deadman then reveals that he's always had dooms since the beginning, but he never realized it. Deadman has had to move on now. He is effectively dead and walks off into the water to head to his beach. This is sort of a bittersweet moment. For Deadman, he has achieved the solace of the afterlife, the peace and communal acceptance of being just like everyone else. Just because he has a different body doesn't mean that he doesn't have a soul. But to Sam, this is a grieving moment. Deadman is gone, and his journey did not result in a happy reunion, but a melancholic send-off. Deadman has found connection in his shared experience, no longer an other, but a part of the whole. But this scene puts forth a very important concept that Death Stranding 2 will try to further, that connection isn't always good. This scene also shows massive growth from Deadman. When we originally met him in the first game, he specialized in dealing with BBs, but he only thought about them as equipment rather than actual children. Of course, he changed his view on this by the end of the first game, but now he clearly cares about Lou as a real child rather than property of Bridges. Fragile contacts Sam again, offering her condolences for his loss. It's time for Sam to head home, back to Lou, back to his family life. Deadman has left a present for Lou, and this is the next delivery that we have to make, to head back home with the present in tow. On his way back, Sam is intercepted by some strange foes, not quite just bandits looking to steal cargo, mechs, armed and scanning the environment, ready to attack. Sam gets an alert as well that his base is being invaded. When he gets home, the place has been ransacked, and Sam tracks Fragile's footprints away from the facility to find her body on the ground. Sam brings Fragile back inside, and we see shots of the disheveled room. We then see a flashback to Fragile taking care of Lou when the alarms on the facility go off. Fragile starts to escape on a single-wheel vehicle, but crashes after being shot only feet from Sam's home. Fragile tried to escape, but she can only take equipment with her, and she couldn't think of Lou as just equipment. Fragile tried to jump out just Lou, but it didn't work. She was shot by an approaching figure, and Lou was killed as well. Sam realizes this back in the home as he watches the BT version of Lou crawl across the floor and inhabit her pod once again. He tries to talk to Lou, hanging on to this BT version of the child because he can't quite come to grips with this. It's far too early to stop the grieving process. Sam effectively just lost his child, and he's dealing with it similarly to how Mama dealt with the loss of her child in the first game, by hanging on to any thread that she could. This is obviously a massive departure for this game, a huge subversion of expectations right from the get-go. Lou was a large focus of the first game, perhaps the second most important character right below Sam. Lou was there during 90% of the journey through the first game and survived the pod, gaining her own life after Sam took her out. But now she's gone, and Sam is going to have to deal with that loss, as will the player. This is perhaps the largest theme that the game tries to further, how we as people deal with grief and loss, and how the people around us can help us deal with that same loss, how connection fosters a further processing of that grief, how isolation prevents us from dealing with these issues, and only by spending time with others, seeing these perspectives, and leaning on the shoulders of our fellow men and women, can we truly move past these things. This ends episode 1 and begins episode 2, Lou, a short cinematic episode of the game. It's 1 month later, and Sam is sitting on a cliff face yet again, taking a nap in the rain. In juxtaposition to the first scene that we saw, it's no longer a bright, beautiful day, but a downpour has fallen. It's overcast and dreary, and most importantly, there's a massive hole in Sam's chest where Lou once sat. Sam walks down the mountain looking for Lou and eventually hears her cries. Sam is shot while stumbling towards the child. As he sees Lou lifeless on the ground, he recalls Fragile telling him about the incident. He is reliving the event as if he was there. He's torturing himself with the guilt, repeating the event in his mind over and over. Sam raises a gun to his head and repatriates, as he can't truly die anyways. He wakes up in his shelter, bathed in red light, hair now gray. He gazes into the pod as slimy tentacles map the inside of the glass. He sees a Lou-shaped BT inside. In a world where beings can't fully move to the other side, can humans ever be expected to move on without them? As Fragile arrives at his shelter again, trying to console him, Sam is surrounded by empty beer cans, drinking himself into a stupor. Sam raises another gun to his head, but firing it only finds clicks where exploding shells should be. Fragile tries to interfere in Sam's newly found guilt cycle. She takes the pod outside, wanting to break this cycle short, hoping to bring Sam some peace. Outside, she shows him a new vehicle, the DHV Magellan. Fragile has a new crew, and she invites Sam to come along to try and connect the Australian continent to the chiral network. This will hopefully give Sam some sort of purpose to break up this endless suffering that he's put himself in. It's worth remembering that Sam already lost a child before the first game even started. He had a relationship with his therapist, and when she died, he went to see her body, and a void out destroyed a nearby town. This whole story will obviously come back up in Death Stranding 2, and some new revelations will shape the way that we view this event. But this loss was why Sam was so standoffish when we first met him in the original Death Stranding. It was why he pushed people away. It was why he was silent. It was why he found it difficult to find connection. The journey of the first game was partly about Sam finding that connection again, that ability to care, to love, to open up. But now Sam once again finds himself in a similar place, so in the interest of helping him process this grief, Fragile has invited him to their new expedition, to hopefully give Sam purpose again and give him the opportunity to move on. This ends episode 2 and begins episode 3, Drawbridge. Sam wakes up on the ship. His skin and clothes are completely gray. This is because the ship they're on, the DHV Magellan, was made to navigate the tar currents. The big tar lake at the top of South America and the tar all around the world can be navigated as if taking a submarine underneath the world. This is normally an instantaneous form of travel, but the ship is currently encountering some issues. For some reason, probably an aesthetic choice, everyone looks a light blue-gray when heading through these currents. Sam is given a tour of the new ship, which will be Drawbridge's base of operations moving forward. Fragile shows Sam the armory, rooms belonging to members of the crew, even a shower for the crew members to use. Sam thinks that the UCA must be behind this, but Fragile says they have an anonymous benefactor that put up the money for the ship. Fragile finally takes Sam to the bridge, where we're introduced to Tarman. He's the pilot of the Magellan, but a former doctor and geophysicist. He has a little pet tar cat with wings that sticks by his side, which we'll find out more about as the game goes on. He's also missing his right hand, lost somewhere in the tar. The connection to this hand allows him to navigate the ship through the Black Ichor. Fragile is basically the commander of this operation. But like I said, they've been tasked with connecting Australia to the chiral network, so we need to head to the Plate Gate in Mexico to gain passage there. Fragile once again makes it clear that the UCA doesn't want to gain more territory. This mission is just about bringing the continent online. Sam heads over to Lou's pod, this crutch that he's hanging on to. Another member of Drawbridge shows himself at this point, Doll Man. His soul somehow ended up inside of a doll, but exactly how, we'll also get there later. He was formerly a spirit medium and tries to tell Sam that the pod he's holding is empty, but he's cut off by Fragile.
Sam, that pod is empty.
It seems that Fragile is trying to play into Sam's delusions, hoping that he'll be able to properly process the loss that he's gone through.
Which is why, yes, I think you two should go on one more adventure.
What are you talking about?
Sam needs to head out into the Plate Gate and travel to Australia, linking the first base to the chiral network so that the Magellan can travel there as well, since it can only operate within the network. Sam is now not just imagining Lou's BT in the pod though, he actually completely pictures Lou, fully alive and as a small child again.
You ready for another trip with Daddy? Okay, kiddo, let's go.
On Sam's way out, Dollman asks if he can join us on the trip, acting as our second traveling companion in the game. When Sam links up to Lou's pod, he gets another flashback, just like in the first game. That time he was seeing through Lou's eyes and experienced parts of Cliff Younger's life and death. This time around, Sam is seeing someone else's memories, someone's experiences. Sam ventures out into Mexico once again and makes his way to the Plate Gate. Arriving there, lightning storms crash to the ground, lifting the soft sand off of the earth and scattering sparks. Sam finds a group of people in red robes carrying staffs, all heading through the gate. A massive sandstorm starts at this time, a new phenomena called a gate quake. Sam makes his way up to the gate, finding only a mirror, but one that produces strange imagery. When he crosses the threshold, he finds himself floating in a watery space, colors reflecting all around, and 5 figures hanging off in the distance. We saw similar characters in the first game, representing the 5 major extinction events or entities that had racked the world. One of them is different now, though, kneeling down before Sam is transported to the other side. Sam then connects the gate on the other side to the chiral network. Fragile quickly lets Sam know that the mysterious patron wants to speak with him. We can head back to the ship and meet the benefactor, who calls himself Charlie. He is represented by a mannequin head with a speaker on it. He claims that he is not an enemy to Drawbridge, but must keep his anonymity. He offers to put the face of one of Sam's old comrades on to make him more at ease. We can try to pick Deadman, Heartman, or Lochna, but the game will not let us choose them for various different reasons. Because Deadman is now gone and that would bring up bad memories, because Charlie claims him imitating Lochna, who is already 2 people in one, would be confusing, and because Heartman is set to join the expedition in Australia anyways. So we're forced to pick Die Hard Man. Charlie still uses the mannequin face, but his voice is that of Die Hard Man, or Tommy Earl Jenkins. Charlie clues us into the current events in the UCA. As it stands, there is technically no president of the UCA since Die Hard Man stepped down. Basically, there's no democratic election of a president anymore because APAS, the automated system that carries out deliveries in the country, can also automatically determine what the public wants in real time. Because of that, the system has elected a president, but not one of the UCA, but of APAC. the Automated Public Assistance Company. They control the automated system that makes deliveries in the country. It's kind of confusing, but APAC is a private entity that controls APAS, the system that controls the deliveries. The president then appears in chiralgram. He has a brand of the APAC logo on his neck and tries to once again quell Sam's fears about conquest. An ongoing thread in the first few chapters is that Sam is very hesitant to connect Australia or even Mexico to the chiral network. He is rightly worried that the UCA is trying to expand its borders. Fragile tries to quell these fears, as does the president. He claims that the UCA has nothing to do with this. It's entirely APAC's decision, which is a private corporation. While it's not great that a private corporation is going to have control over an entire continent, it is at least a separation from the UCA, so the whole world isn't eventually controlled by them. The president also theorizes that once Australia is online, other plate gates should open and they'll be able to get more information on other land masses in the world. Connecting Australia is effectively about connecting the entire world. As the president bids farewell, he sees Amelie at the front of the bridge, seemingly a hallucination. As Sam heads back out to Australia, he sees another vision through someone's eyes as they're shot at. Our goal is now to connect the first large city to the network, West Fort Knott. Of course, we have to connect a chain of facilities to get there. A nearby shelter inhabited by members of a group trying to re-establish the Australian government is suffering from chiral contamination, which we can cure by delivering a chiral decontaminator. This means heading through a particularly dangerous area full of BTs. The Western Environmental Observatory has been taken over by brigands, which means we need to take them out and liberate the shelter. The observatory is able to, without the brigands bothering them, monitor the chiralium levels nearby and study the tar currents. This should make travel with the DHV Magellan easier. This facility is also part of a bigger picture. There are 4 environmental observatories in Australia, and if we manage to get all of them online, they can calculate where the next plate gate will appear, potentially opening access to even more continents. Before we head to West Fort Knott, Fragile recommends we take a nap back in the Magellan. Of course, here, Sam has a dream about being on the beach with Amelie. He sees a flashback to the end of the first game when she hugged him and sent him away from her beach. Not only is Sam haunted by his grief about Lou's death, but he's also haunted about what happened to Amelie last time around. Sam heads to grab the next order, and on the way out, he sees another vision of a man pointing a gun and actually being shot dead, but he has some strange marking on his hand. Tarman lets us know that some device is causing the tar currents nearby to become unstable. This will prevent us from connecting West Fort Knott to the chiral network. We have to destroy this device in the nearby brigand camp. After this is dealt with, we can make a delivery to a new prepper, the musician. The musician, as you can probably tell, makes music, and he also gifts us with songs that we can play to keep us company while wandering this Australian wasteland. Now that we disabled the chiral jammer, Tarman receives a report that a tar eruption was recorded near West Fort Knott. Heading over there, we find the entrance covered in tar, and red-robed figures rise out of the black substance. Their leader appears, lifting from a red coffin, wearing a mask. He quickly reveals himself to be Higgs, claiming that he's just a ghost. He's here to get his revenge on Fragile and Sam. Higgs was the large antagonist of the first game, attempting to become an extinction entity, or at least use Amelie as one to bring about the last stranding, destroying the entire world in the process, or at least starting it anew. He's now back somehow, even though he died on the beach in the last game, which would prevent a repatriate from coming back.
The kid kicked the bucket, huh? Shame. Goddamn shame. Tonight, what, you just lugging that coffin or... Sorry. Pod. Going on a walkabout?
He can't kill Sam since he is a repatriate, but he can make him miserable for the rest of time. He can torture him endlessly. He plans to not destroy the world, but to build a new one where fear and violence are king. We then have a boss fight with a massive mech that Higgs manages to summon. This thing has many tendrils that shoot out, attempting to crush Sam or grab him. Each of the tendrils has a small red weak point that we need to target to destroy and sever them. Once it's defeated, West Fort Knot is safe for now, and we can bring them online to the chiral network. This is the first of the major cities that will bring online in Australia, and it represents a massive step for connecting the continent. The president contacts us after this big breakthrough. Even though we've made progress, the rest of the continent is still experiencing massive disruptions in the tar currents. Sam tells Fragile about Higgs' return. She theorizes that Higgs was the one that attacked her and Lou at the shelter. She remembers the figures all wearing red that day, but she never saw him up close. Fragile then feels some guilt as well for not killing Higgs when she had the chance. Sam is haunted by Higgs' words, realizing that he didn't know anything about Lou and how she got to him in the first place. He asks Fragile to look into the UCA records to find anything she can on his child. We then see a flashback in black and white to the day that Fragile was attacked. It's another dream that Sam was having. He sees another vision on the way out of the Magellan. This man is having an argument with an official in a suit. Charlie gives us new orders. While waiting for Fragile to find more information about Lou and for Tarman to finish his research into the giant mech that we destroyed, we can continue bringing the network together. Fragile makes a breakthrough pretty quickly after our next order. 4 years ago, Lou was given the serial number BB28. Instead of getting a new one, Lou got an old, recycled number. This could be what Higgs was talking about, that there is a greater mystery hiding behind Lou, but Fragile hasn't found much more information just yet. Fragile warns Sam that he's heading down a bad path, that Higgs wants him to chase down the past. But that's all Sam has right now, the past. He can't let go of Lou. He can't even tell himself the truth about what happened. Digging into Lou's history could provide new information, things that he needs to know, but it's also only making his grief process worse. When Sam heads to his private room, he finds a photo of Tarman and a young gentleman. We can go speak to Tarman about it, who reveals that this is his son. He originally had the vessel built to help him research chiral mammals in the tar and the substance itself. One day they caught one of these mammals, a whale. His son went to inspect it and didn't strap himself in before heading out. After touching it, the being changed and a timefall storm started. BTs crawled out of its stomach, grabbing Tarman's son and pulling him into the tar. Tarman tried to rescue him, but he failed to save his son and lost his arm in the process. This arm is running through the tar currents even now, which is what enables him to ride the currents with the Magellan, this connection. Tarman knows what Sam is going through even more than he realizes. These two are living with similar guilt, carrying it as if it's a heavy cargo on their backs. But Tarman is maybe at a later stage in this process than Sam is, somewhere where he can be okay with this pain, make peace with it. But just like the phantom pain of his lost arm, that doesn't mean it's gone.
Something akin to a phantom pain.
Sam sees another vision on his way out of the Magellan, seemingly a view of the same man, dead, being transported to corpse disposal. Our next goal is to bring the second environmental observatory online, once again by linking up a chain of facilities on the way. The first shelter is Rainbow Valley, a facility that needs terraforming equipment to conduct its research in the mountains. Nearby, we find a girl in a raincoat with an umbrella, dancing in the canyon. We hear that familiar song that was introduced at the beginning of the game, Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, only too literal and fitting for this moment. This girl doesn't seem to be affected by the timefall, but a bird nearby is affected by it, collapsing on the ground. She manages to save the animal and take it inside her shelter. We follow the woman inside, where Sam finds a whole host of plants being taken care of and kept alive. Sam finds this woman. This new character is named Rainey, and she's set to be the next member of Drawbridge. She's already familiar with the entire crew, only meeting Sam for the first time now. This marks the end of Episode 3, but before we move on, let's take a look at the current state of things. Sam has completed the first chunk of his journey. He's connected a good portion of the initial areas of the chiral network, and he's making a difference, but he still hasn't even come close to facing the truth, that Lou is gone. He's starting to dig into his past, because becoming closer to Lou would mean that she isn't really gone. On the other hand, he's meeting people that are dealing with similar grief. Tarman lost his son and has seemingly moved on even now. Losing his son or going through this event took a literal piece of him away, but he uses that event to his advantage. The hand that he lost helps him move this ship, even now, through the tar. Higgs died as well, or at least we thought he died, but he's a ghost that's come back to haunt Sam, a villain from his past, showing that death really isn't even close to the end. This is something we'll get into far deeper as we find out more about the story, but one of the larger themes alongside grief and loss is that death can't tear us apart. I don't think that the game means to say that death is not permanent or that it should be treated lightly, but that death doesn't mean that someone is gone or that their effect didn't matter. And sometimes the game is using the term death to not literally mean death. This theme can be interpreted more broadly to say that people have an impact on your life or your experience. Everything you do in the future is influenced by your past, and that tomorrow is not possible without today. Before we move on and talk about Episode 4, let's also talk about some of the changes that Death Stranding 2 makes to the gameplay. We already established the fundamentals in Mexico, but now that we've stepped through the gate into a new world, into a new continent, let's talk about the new things that Death Stranding 2 introduces. I talked about this before, but Death Stranding 2 introduces a lot to these systems. Some of these systems I won't talk about until later sections of the video, because in general, I'd like to talk about the quality of life that this game provides. Before Death Stranding 2 released, I spent a solid 30 hours going back into my Death Stranding Director's Cut PC save and just exploring the world, building structures and getting a lot of Legend of Legends deliveries in the game. Part of this was because I felt like I wanted to get everything out of the first game that I could. I also felt like, even though millions of people had played the game at that point, building some helpful structures for new players might make a bit of a difference, even if an incredibly small one. But part of this was also because I saw a lot of the changes that Death Stranding 2 was going to introduce from the previews, and I sort of knew that it was going to be incredibly difficult to go back to the first game when the second game released. I loved the first Death Stranding. It was easily one of my favorite games released in the last decade, but I knew that the quality of life improvements that the sequel would introduce would make it hard to go back once those changes were taken for granted. So I decided to savor my last moments with this piece of media that I loved, at least for a while. I was saying goodbye to this game because it meant moving forward into the future, into tomorrow. Once Death Stranding 2 was released, my fears were validated. Death Stranding 2 introduces so many small changes that make the game easier to interface with, that make the world easier to traverse, and that just generally make the experience a better time than Death Stranding 1. I could list every single one of these in this video, and talk about their implications, but there are a ton, and generally they just boil down to something that fans probably complained about in the first game. Very minor inconveniences that have now been ironed out by the team to create a more cohesive product that doesn't make the game as difficult to engage with. Ziplines now give you the ability to adjust their pitch. You can create a curve to the zipline so that it travels up in an arc, essentially avoiding direct objects in your way or getting over large hurdles. You can also do this with the horizontal axis, curving the zipline to the right or left, once again allowing for far easier zipline connections this time around. This was a huge improvement because in the first game you would inevitably have to reckon with the fact that traveling through the mountain regularly would mean constructing a massive zipline network. A microcosmic version of the chiral network itself, linking each and every one of the prepper shelters together by this physical rope. This was difficult to do though, as finding the perfect position for a zipline was a task that took a lot of experimenting. Though it was rewarding in the end, it was time consuming, and now in Death Stranding 2, you can plop these bad boys all over the environment and just adjust their pitch before placing them. I would often find other players' ziplines that didn't quite fit my network. I would remove them and place one of my own that curved upwards so that I could reach a higher part of the mountain. Speaking of taking complicated routes, Death Stranding 2 features an upgraded route simulator. In the first game, you could plan out your routes on the map by placing little markers and checking to see what hazards were in your way. In the second game, these hazards are automatically marked. Does your route have a massive cliff in the middle of it that you might need a few climbing anchors to get down? Well, don't worry, because the route simulator will let you know this before you leave. Does your upcoming journey have some BT areas in front of it? Well, have no fear, because you'll be notified when planning your route and can take some effective weapons or plan to sneak before you leave. These are fairly small changes, and most of the changes in the game are like this. You can now manage cargo from a small radial menu that allows you to auto-arrange it or drop it with the click of a button. This means you don't have to actually go into the cargo menu if you're just trying to do something simple. You can also drop all of your unusable items from this menu, meaning that you don't have to go in and manually remove every single one. There's a handgun holster now so that your small pistol doesn't take up a massive cargo slot. This also incentivizes using pistols over larger weapons, making them more viable in combat. There are so many others, and this doesn't even factor into the new items that are introduced, the new mechanics for stealth, combat, and driving, because all of those will be in their own sections later in the video. But perhaps my favorite change is one that's very subtle, that you might not have even noticed yet. During the first game, when you would enter a BT or bandit-controlled area, time would slow down, and the game would zoom in on your Odra deck, popping out of your suit. This was meant as a break, to tell you to slow down because you were either going to need to sneak or fight your way through this next area. That has been taken away in the sequel, at least part of it. The game still alerts you when these enemies are nearby, but the game doesn't fully stop and slow down. You still move at full speed, we just focus on the Odra deck appearing for a few seconds, along with a musical cue to let you know that danger lies ahead. If you played a lot of the first game, then you know that this improvement is massive, especially once you get to the end game. In Death Stranding 1, when you had already beat the story and were just making deliveries in the post-game, possibly trying to get the Platinum Trophy, BTs and bandits are not really a problem at that point. They've ceased to become an issue because you most likely have zipline networks established and have fully constructed the roads allowing for easier traversal through the continent. So when you're driving down the road that you've traveled down hundreds of times already, and the game has to stop you for a few seconds because you're traveling through a BT area, it becomes a little more than annoying. Luckily, Death Stranding 2 completely gets rid of this, and it was something that I was so happy to see. I also think it was only effective at generating horror in the first game, the initial few times that you encountered it, so it wasn't even really useful once you got deeper into the story. I say all this to mean that Death Stranding 2 doesn't just introduce new weapons, items, or mechanics, it also hones in on everything that made the first game great and makes it even better. The story reflects this. The game isn't trying to reinvent the wheel. In some ways, it's just trying to perfect the wheel. It recognizes that there were things that it could have done better the first time. It extrapolates upon those things and nails them on the second time around. For the first half of the story, we are essentially encountering the same situation, connecting a chiral network on a continent, trying to bring people together and get them united. The latter half of the game turns this idea on its head, though, and introduces new concepts that you could have never expected. With Rainey's introduction to the Drawbridge crew, we end episode 3 and begin episode 4, Raindrops. Rainey arrives on the DHV Magellan, being entirely accepted into the crew. Sam's next order is to rescue a kangaroo and deliver it to a nearby animal shelter, thus bringing them online to the chiral network. Gathering the kangaroo proves difficult because there are raining meteors coming down all around us, causing brush fires in the area. Since we're encountering one of our first major environmental disasters of the game, we should probably talk about the impact that weather has on Death Stranding 2. In the first game, the main two things that you wanted to avoid were snowfall and timefall. Timefall is essentially a rain that causes things to quickly age or advance in time. If a package gets rained on, for example, the container can quickly become damaged, eventually causing the contents to be damaged as well. In the second game, the weather is a lot more dynamic, meaning that there are more possibilities for disaster. We, of course, still have to deal with timefall and storms, but we can now encounter gate quakes that will cause various changes in the environment. The first time we encounter this is in the introduction sequence when Sam is walking back to his shelter in Mexico. As we are walking along the tops of the mountain range, a gate quake happens and the mountain range begins to crumble in front of us. This isn't the only thing that can happen with a gate quake though. Mountains can collapse, rivers can flood and overflow, and we can encounter fires out in the wild. This whole system is dynamic and we never really know when these things are going to happen. We can often see them happening on the map, which will alert us when a gate quake is going to happen or as it's happening. This takes the whole weather idea from the first game and pushes it the entire way. I saw a lot of people complaining that they didn't really encounter these during the game, but I think the most common version of this is the rivers flooding, which is a subtle change that you most likely wouldn't notice in your playthrough. The complaint here raises from the fact that during the prologue, we actively see a gate quake happening. We think that there's a possibility later in the game we could be caught in a massive mudslide or avalanche, and there are scripted moments where these happen. But the intent for this mechanic seems to be for these to happen while the player is not around, dynamically changing the world and adjusting how we traverse through the area. It forces the player to make one of two choices, to either find out a new way to move through the natural disaster, or to find a path to take around the natural disaster. This brings up a larger problem with a lot of the complaints about Death Stranding 2, though I have seen very few. Many people have complained that the game is too easy, and this falls back into the larger subject of player agency, which I will have a full section about later in this video. But this game does lean on player agency, and players are naturally going to choose the easiest course of action. This is fine, but when you're given two choices, and one is far easier than the other, and you pick the easier option, you can't exactly complain that the game is too easy or that you never encounter some sort of mechanic that the game clearly presents to you. The new natural disasters do introduce a dynamic world, one that adjusts as you play. In this way, the mechanic is successful, and I really enjoyed getting caught in these floods or happening upon brush fires or encountering avalanches in the mountains. It just adds a bit more realism to the world and complicates the deliveries in areas that you don't really expect it to. It also seems like a particularly complicated system that's honestly really impressive to see implemented here. After delivering the kangaroo to the animal shelter, Rainey pops out of the Magellan, looking at the raging fire that's surrounded them. She uses her powers to summon the rain and completely save the surrounding areas. Sam asks Fragile about Rainey, and we get a flashback with narration about Rainey's backstory. Any time that she would step outside, the timefall followed. She couldn't stop it, and she was ousted by both her community and her parents. She was chased away from the community as a witch.
A few even tried to burn me alive. The most dedicated witch hunters.
She eventually had to go out on her own, and she enrolled in a UCA program that would allow her to become a mother. She was pregnant, but she still couldn't find anyone that would take her. Since she was connected to the rain, the people hunted her and pushed her away. The way they saw it, she was responsible for the degradation of their surroundings. Rainey eventually stood on the edge of a bridge, planning to take a fall, until Fragile found her. Fragile realized that her power could be useful, not just a curse that makes people hate her. She referred to Rainey as a pharmakon, a Greek word that can mean either a poison or a cure. Rainey's powers just needed to be viewed through a different lens. For Rainey, Drawbridge isn't just an organization, it's a family, a group, a place that she can call home.
I'll be your umbrella. And together we'll show the world the hope in your reign. Come on. Who wouldn't want the baby to catch a cold?
After seeing the sadness that Rainey came from, we now see her happy and smiling, realizing that she's found her place in this world. Rainey is a pretty important character for quite a lot of reasons. First of all, in-world, her abilities are extremely useful. To be able to call the rain and put out these absolutely devastating brush fires on the Australian continent is useful to the team. But also, Rainey isn't just someone that can call rain. She is a representation of progress in society. In this way, she also shows us the people that are afraid, terrified even, of this society progressing forward. They are willing to oust a member of their community because of something they don't fully understand. But Rainey also stands as the benchmark for community. One of the larger themes that Death Stranding 2 carries over from the first game is connection. The sequel tries to push a different type of connection while also commenting on the connection from the first game. But the overall point of the game seems to be that the people around you have an effect on you, that your journey is not yours alone, but all of these strands connect you to others, and those strands are just as important as the actions that you took. This is the same with Rainey, and while it will take Sam quite a while to realize the same thing, Rainey has already accepted this community. She has realized that she needs to lean on people to move forward, to accept the help, and become part of a larger whole to survive in this world. Sam reports to the bridge after finishing his order. Fragile explains Rainey's powers a little bit more in depth. She brings timefall wherever she goes, but the rain within a short distance from her body isn't actually timefall, but something they call corefall. Corefall doesn't speed up the degradation of things, but restores them to a previous state. It's a healing rain rather than a harming one. Rainey should be due to give birth to her child any day now, but she has still baby syndrome. Her child's growth is stuck at 7 months. It's effectively frozen in time, but no treatment has been found yet. The leading theory is that this syndrome is caused by an imbalance in beaches. There are many beaches in Death Stranding that people travel to when they die, but an upper beach supposedly links them all together. The expansion of the chiral network may have a connection to the disruption of this upper beach, and the beach has some sort of effect on the unborn. Charlie chimes in to say that expanding the chiral network to the world may actually stabilize the connection to the upper beach, fixing this problem. These are all possibilities, though. Nothing is concrete or proven just yet. Sam has a new order to deliver a large quantity of materials that can only be retrieved back in West Fortnott. On the way out, another vision, this time of burning buildings and fire raining from above. Heading back to West Fortnott, we can take our longest delivery yet. We need to bring materials to the Northern Environmental Observatory. The second one we will have connected in the Australian continent. They need these resources to resume monitoring activities in the area. After making this delivery, Tarman wants us to investigate a nearby anomaly that seems to be the cause of the recent disruptions in the tar currents. Nearby, Sam finds a massive wall of tar and is pulled in by BTs. We then see shots of an old European street. Men in military outfits and tactical equipment swoop in on dirt bikes. A new character rises from the tar on a bike of his own, his face covered in a bag. He pulls the bag off and the group's bikes dissolve into the tar. The man wraps a bandana around his head and fireworks erupt behind him. This ends episode 4 and begins episode 5, Conflagration. Sam finds himself on this old street, fireworks being set off in every direction and lost shadows wandering around. He sees a pretty clear figure of a woman walking beside them, and we're allowed to wander this place. These sections are very similar to our face-offs with Cliff Younger in the first game, but instead of different wars theming each of the arenas, this time around we are fighting in representations of natural disasters. This one is specifically meant to reference fire, the flashing fireworks spinning all over the place, the flames on the streets. This once again ties back into the emphasis on natural disasters in the open world. And I have to say, these sections are absolutely gorgeous, and just some of the reason that people have been saying this feels like the first next-gen game. It's shockingly impressive what Koji Pro was able to do with the PS5 tech, and the fact that this game runs well seems impossible, but it does. I've also never really seen something like this in a game, and once again just furthers the praise that I gave the game earlier for how unique it is. We fight or stealth around the mercenaries and eventually find their leader who wants to face off with us. We have a genuine boss battle against this guy. We have to track him through this cemetery covered in candles, fireworks shooting off in the background. After damaging the leader enough, he teleports to different areas, and we have to chase him and his lackeys around the place. Once we finally defeat him, he is slumped against the base of a statue. He tries to say something that sounds like Nirvana. Dollman theorizes he is saying this is a realm for the enlightened. Sam is shot back by a massive explosion, and he tries to save the girl that he saw before. He fades and wakes back up in the real world to find animals picking at some sort of carcass. The girl from the other realm is trapped inside of it, and Sam picks her up to take her back to the Magellan. Since we just got one of our first strictly combat encounters, it's probably a good time to talk about combat and its newly placed emphasis on this entry. In the first game, combat was sort of an afterthought. There were some moments where we had to engage in it, boss fights for example, and some bandit camps that we had to travel through. These could be stealthed through, but stealth was a bit more difficult in that entry as well. It was generally either you had to fight or you didn't. Now, every combat encounter generally gives you the option of fighting or not, but in that same vein, combat has been upgraded a fair amount. There's a lot more depth to the system this time around. We have so many more options in combat. This comes from a huge variety in items that is a subject entirely in and of itself. But just outside of the various weapons that we use, we have different methods of approach as well. We can get into an absolute firefight, taking heavier weapons with a lot more ammunition and just mowing down enemies in a messy battle. Or we can take a stealthy approach. We can spot enemies from afar in a system that feels particularly like the approaches we would take in Metal Gear Solid 5. But perhaps the biggest addition to combat is in that of the ability to actually realistically fight BTs. This time around, the BT system has been reworked a bit. We still encounter them out in the wild, and when trekking through their areas, we can be spotted by larger BTs. If we're captured, then we're dragged away to fight an even bigger one. But now we can actually choose to fight these BTs and clear out an entire area if we choose to. Using weapons that damage both humans and BTs equally, or weapons specifically designed to take the terrifying monsters out, we can destroy these things before they even have the chance to see us. One of the new additions here is in that of the Gazer, a terrifying stalker enemy, a large BT with bright star-like eyes that they use to spot Sam even when relatively hidden. This enemy will attempt to chase us down, and pumping them full of a few large grenades is far less terrifying than trying to hold your breath and hunker down. The combat overall is much better in the second entry. We even have the upgraded ability to go hand-to-hand with our foes, which was there in the first game, but the system felt more like an afterthought than in the sequel. Also, most of the bullets in Death Stranding 2 are stun bullets. They won't actually kill human enemies. You have the option to turn lethal bullets on, but you need to jump through some hoops to do so. In the first game, you could very easily kill enemies, and this would cause you to have to deal with the corpse afterwards. Otherwise, you would cause a void out, leaving a massive crater where the body was left. This can still happen in the sequel, but you have to go out of your way to do it. While I loved that feature in the original game, I feel that after the initial romance period has worn off with it, it would become a bit more cumbersome in the second entry, so I'm honestly glad it's more of a secret Easter egg here than a full-fledged game mechanic. The whole thing flows a lot better and feels like a combat system that Kojima would create. This is partly because combat and fighting wasn't necessarily supposed to be a part of the first game. It wasn't an idea that the story was trying to push forward. The whole theme of the first game was choosing the rope over the stick. With the sequel, that has changed. The message seems to be that sometimes the stick is necessary, or at least forcing the main characters into situations where they have to use their sticks is necessary. There's a lot of variety to combat and agency to the choice of stealth, but before we talk about those, let's talk about the story a bit more. When Sam finds the mysterious woman trapped in the shell, we end episode 5 and begin episode 6, Chrysalis. The Chrysalis is aboard the Magellan, and Tarman is trying to cut through it to free the girl from this strange prison. Once they get her out, they find the girl covered in tar and small circular incision marks covering her body. As they pull these tiny needles out, she awakens, and Sam in turn finds himself in bed aboard the Magellan. He goes next door and finds Fragile and Tarman struggling to keep the girl grounded to the bed. When she has nightmares, she connects with the beach. This causes chiralium to flow into her body, making her float in the air endlessly. The girl is in perfect medical condition, but they're still analyzing the Chrysalis shell that she was found in. The small marks on her arm seem to be similar to a chiral rash. The tar-like secretions that come out of these incisions cause the same effects as timefall. Fragile believes that she was born in the realm that we fought the bandanaed man in. Fragile has given her a name, only barely able to speak to her when she woke up, still in shock. She's taken to calling her Tomorrow. The tar anomaly that we investigated has caused other issues for the world as well. Tons of cargo washed up with it, and the nearby brigands have stolen this cargo, including many bombs and pieces of equipment. We have to go steal this equipment to ensure that the cargo stays out of the wrong hands. After this order, Tomorrow has regained consciousness, and Sam goes back on board the ship to meet her. She's sitting in a room with Rainey and Fragile, eating cryptobiotes. She won't eat normal food, and has a habit of sucking her thumb to comfort herself, something that Fragile is trying to break. Sam is then tasked with connecting the northern part of the continent to the chiral network. This begins with the F2 South Distribution Center. A lot of the staff there are former members of the Cape Fort Knot City, which was swallowed up by the tar. They, just like everyone else, have faced heightened levels of chiral contamination, so delivering some necrobiotes to them should help. Necrobiotes are a form of cryptobiote, a sort of variant of the creature. It allows people to navigate through BT areas, but they are incredibly rare and extremely dangerous to those without dooms. After this delivery and bringing the distribution center online, we can head back aboard the DHV Magellan, where we find Rainey and Tomorrow getting along. Rainey is brushing the other girl's hair, singing "Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head" to her. Sam, watching this scene, then starts singing the song himself before walking off.
Okay.
Raindrops keep falling on my head, but that doesn't mean my eyes will soon be turned.
While Sam sleeps, he feels another massive gate quake. West Fort Knot received the worst of it, meaning that we need to deliver some cargo to them to repair the damages. We can take them supplies and then head back to the distribution center to get a new order to rescue someone who has been taken captive by the nearby armed survivalists. The hostage was conducting a search in a nearby mining region on orders from the Dowser. We can grab him from the outpost and take him back there to connect the Dowser to the chiral network. After bringing this facility online, Fragile wants us to come back aboard and get some rest, as well as see the progress Tomorrow has been making. While she's up and around and walking, she's also trying to leave the ship. The crew, of course, has to stop her from this because it's dangerous for her out in the world. She touches an apple that Rainey has grown, and it immediately ripens and rots. Tomorrow and Rainey are the perfect pair, and they exemplify the term chiral that the game loves to base its characters, world, and themes on. Rainey is a girl that was ousted by her own community because of her abilities. She reverses the time of objects and people. She is the healing force. She has no place in the world because she doesn't know where she came from. She seemingly can't communicate or doesn't want to. Her powers advance the time of the objects or people around her. They are exact opposites, but they have experienced similar feelings in this world, explaining why they get along so well. Rainey has found some use for her powers in Drawbridge. Maybe Tomorrow will find something similar soon. Sam heads to the bridge as the crew is having a meeting about Tomorrow. The place where they found her is still showing tar anomaly activity. Tarman thinks that there might still be a way back to the place she came from. No one wants to send her back, but Tarman thinks that if her family is still in that realm, that might be where she belongs. Tomorrow overhears this conversation, and obviously this makes her feel like she doesn't have a place at Drawbridge either. Tarman theorizes that the tar is a primordial soup that things are born from, but Tomorrow isn't a chiral creature, she is a human. Fragile stands up for the woman. She's a human being, so of course she belongs here. The whole thing becomes a debate with everyone weighing in on the conflict. Sam finally votes to not send her back. Fragile makes the final decision, allowing her to stay at least until things have calmed down. Shortly after this, Fragile realizes that Tomorrow is gone. We need to track her down because she could be captured by bandits outside, attacked by BTs, or even killed. We can track Tomorrow's footsteps across the world and even find different structures that she's placed around the landscape. These tracks eventually lead us to a small plateau where we are attacked by new types of enemies. They are closer to the mechs that we fought earlier, except this time they excel in melee combat with small underhand blades that allow them to attack quickly. After defeating them, Sam finds Tomorrow's jacket and another mech attacks him. Tomorrow is then allowed to show off her abilities and how she can use her powers to assist the group. This is easily one of the coolest scenes in the entire game. Tomorrow uses the tar currents underground to disappear, traveling through them seamlessly, skating across them on land, and every time she touches a mech, she causes it to age quickly, decimating her enemies with a simple point of contact. Sam thanks her after he is saved. Tomorrow finally speaks at this point, telling Sam that she had nowhere else to go. She doesn't remember a family, isn't sure if she has a family out there waiting for her. She asks Sam a simple question: is she really alive? She's afraid that she's causing conflict aboard the ship, and Sam quells her fears.
We're just worried about you. What?
I don't think I ever had a family. Do you have one?
No. Not anymore.
You miss them?
Yeah.
This reinforces the sort of band of ragtag misfits that's becoming the team at Drawbridge. People who don't have a place, people that feel alone in this world, people that just want to help other people. They found connection in the only place they could, the communal understanding of those who have trod the same path. Sam and Tomorrow head back to the ship, and the young woman is now allowed to feel a part of this family. Fragile tells her that she'll help her to control her powers. Rainey gives her a chiral ring, allowing her to be tracked on the network so they can always come and rescue her if she needs it. After Sam wakes up, Tarman has finally finished analyzing the mech technology from back at West Fortnot. He has determined that these mechs are all sort of using the same tech, but they aren't robots. They aren't controlled remotely, they aren't autonomous, and they don't need to be on the chiral network to function. Tarman labels them ghost mechs because they seem to be spirit-driven machines, as he can't exactly piece out how they work. With this, we have more orders to take care of and more shelters to bring online. On Sam's way out, he has another vision of the burning city. This time, a child is crying out for his parents and is led away by a girl. We can travel along the mountains and make our way out to Hartman's lab, as he's been set up in the area and is planning on joining Drawbridge once we bring his facility online. Sam heads inside and finds a similar room setup that we found at Hartman's lab in the first game. Tons of media that can be consumed in the 21 minutes that Hartman is alive. As you probably know, Hartman would die every few minutes to travel the beach and look for his family. Now he is using this ability to come back over and over again to catalog the upper beach. He also has an upgraded unit that allows him to fall anywhere that he stands and not hit the floor. He has a large pod now on his chest as well that looks like a massive organ. His heart isn't doing that well these days, which isn't surprising considering how many times he's stopped it. Hartman has been cataloging the beach for APAS as a way to track the best method of connecting Australia to the chiral network. During these efforts, he has collected water samples from the different beaches he's visited. These samples were meant for his collaborator, the hydrologist, who has a lab set up in the next room. She doesn't show her face, but assumingly this is the woman that Hartman talked about at the end of the first game. This whole room is eventually revealed to be a hologram, and Sam can try and look into the hydrologist's lab, but she vomits out of the hole and tells Sam to take good care of her friend. We can meet Heartman aboard the Magellan. He has been receiving emails from himself, even though he didn't send them. These emails have contained information about BBs and chiral communications tech from the UCA records. Fragile has been receiving similar ones that Heartman did not send out. Heartman specifically received information about the BBs sacrificed to build the foundation of the chiral network. Since the BBs were connected to the beach and the real world, they could be used to transfer data and create a network that would connect everyone chirally. The initial Death Stranding occurred during a C-section with a still mother. The doctor in the room glimpsed the beach during the procedure, since the unborn child had a connection to the beach. R&D began shortly afterwards, and they found that they needed these children to use the beach to transfer data. Luckily, this model of sacrificial BBs was only required for the initial expedition by Bridges to set up the foundation for the chiral network. The Cupid model no longer requires this. Bridget Strand attempted to stop this research from happening as she didn't want to create still mothers just to further progress. Bridges didn't stop, though. They smuggled still mothers into the country from Mexico. Heartman received information on the 10 original BBs that were used to create the network. 10 were prepped, but only 9 were actually used. The missing 10th BB could not be found by Heartman as he didn't have the proper clearance to access the data. They aren't sure if there is a connection between Lou and the missing 10th BB. The question is, why was Lou in storage while the initial expedition set off? With this mystery properly cemented, we end episode 6 and begin episode 7, Pod. Sam is once again tasked with making another delivery. We head out and he sees a vision of the same man with the mark on his hand talking to a woman about smuggling cargo. Sam is tasked with delivering orders to a variety of preppers in the area. This has to be done because the original next destination for connection was North Fort Knot, but that city was destroyed in a void-out. Unfortunately, similar to the first game, a lot of the preppers in the area are not interested in connecting to the chiral network. This means that we have to win over the pizza chef to convince everyone else that it is a good decision. We have to deliver some beach yeast from Heartman's lab to quell his fears. Once we have the pizza chef, we can deliver pizzas to the others in the area, convincing them with the chef's delicious food creations. This allows us to bring the architect and the data scientist online, expanding the chiral network greatly once again. Back in the DHV Magellan, Tomorrow asks Fragile what her name means. She doesn't understand the concept of time or its passage.
Listen. You are alive. The person you were yesterday is different from the one you are today, and the one you'll be tomorrow. You're changing. That's what living is. To change and to embrace change. To transform.
As you can probably already tell, Tomorrow, just like every other character in the Death Stranding games or Hideo Kojima games in general, is named very literally. Her ability advances time, furthering the theme of tomorrow or the future. She, like Rainey, is part of the next generation. Less so, but still a representation of progress and how society interacts with it. The lessons and concepts that she's learning from Fragile seem simple, but they're also things that Sam needs to hear as well. That you change every day, that to live means to transform, to become different than you were before. This great change that occurred at the beginning of the game, Lou being gone, is a change that Sam has not acclimated to just yet. The transformation of others in your life is transformation of yourself. If the people in Drawbridge, if Sam's friends like Fragile and Deadman, if Lou is viewed as an extension of Sam, then losing that piece of yourself is justifiably categorized as transformation. Sam is then tasked with bringing the motherhood shelter online. We have to grab an old BB pod that was stolen by the brigands in the area. Once we arrive at the facility, we have to put in a passcode to open it. The only way that we can figure out this passcode is by checking the corpus, a listing of every facility, piece of equipment, and character in the game. The Motherhood's corpus listing says that the door will only open if we input the date of our own birth. This is the date that we entered at the very beginning of the game. This isn't the first time that Kojima has used the player's birth date in games. It was common in the Metal Gear series, and even the first Death Stranding utilized the month of your birth to change how chirality affected you. It almost seems like a given at this point that a Kojima game will include some sort of small interactive detail like this that will change with each player. Delivering the cargo, Sam is invited inside, but the inhabitants of the Motherhood are very hesitant of any outsiders, greeting him with weapons in hand. They lead him in and Sam meets the doctor. This is a women's settlement. Men generally aren't let inside, but Sam is an exception. The doctor takes Lou's BB pod, and using her chiral hands, she's able to examine the pod. She can also use this to take a child from a still mother's womb and place them into a pod. She tries to tell Sam that he's suffering from persistent complex bereavement disorder, but he doesn't want to hear it. This is a mental health condition that usually affects one's feeling grief that persists and impacts their daily life for a long period of time. Before Sam leaves, the doctor reveals that she can transfer children to pods and examine them. This doesn't enable her to bring children to term outside of a still mother, though. She has tried and it's failed, specifically with Caesar, one of the women staying here. This whole facility is meant to be a safe place for mothers with still baby syndrome. Not long after mothers started coming here, men started knocking on their doors. This is why they began to arm themselves to protect each other. If they fail, they'll be enslaved. They get their weapons from a nearby factory, but the brigands are getting access to the same ones. They request that Sam shut down the weapons factory to ensure that the people who want to do them harm don't have a way to fight. This is one of the first appearances of a larger sub-theme in Death Stranding 2, the idea of arming yourself to fight against those who are already armed. These weapon factories are making it easier for people in the area to get sticks. The Motherhood has found themselves using sticks as well to try and make sure they're safe. It's sort of a mutually assured destruction in this world. Rarely ever in the first game was the door of the prepper shelter passed over. It was a threshold, and we would only communicate with preppers through their chiralgrams displaying on delivery terminals. Now we will often go inside of shelters like the Motherhood. The threshold of Sam's shelter was broken at the beginning of the game. This happening so early must mean that it is meant to tell us something. It's meant to display the fact that these bunkers are no longer safe places, that people can now break in. I don't think this was an impossibility in the first game, but a technical limitation that caused most of the real people we saw and full cutscenes to take place in the private room or on the beach. So this is sort of a meta restructuring of narrative boundaries. We understand early on that these limitations are past and that people are in danger of being raided and attacked, even inside of the shelters. This danger, violence, and fighting is depicted through only dialogue in a much more real and present way than it was before. The cargo thieves back in the UCA were mainly seen as just that, thieves taking belongings away from porters and travelers. Now the brigands and the ghost mechs are clearly stepping over a further line in Australia, developing a sort of very light Mad Max-style world where people are arming themselves to protect each other or to get what they want. It's no coincidence that the game is set in Australia and that Tarman is physically modeled after the director George Miller. Before Sam leaves, the doctor has something to check on him.
There.
Though a simple scene, I believe this is meant to depict the wounds that Sam is still carrying around, the grief that he walks with every day. The pain has become so regular that he doesn't even notice it any longer, and only by leaning on others can this pain be pulled from him. And for others, it's simple. For Sam on his own, it is complex and difficult. As we leave, Tarman contacts us to tell Sam that the DHV Magellan is currently out of order. Its propulsion systems are clogged with tar, and they need a special solution to dissolve it. We can head back to a previous distribution center to retrieve the solution and bring it back to the Magellan, which can't travel until it's fixed. Sam takes a nap while the ship is repaired, and when he wakes up, the crew has managed to locate the area in which the weapons factory lies. We need to head into the desert and disable the fabricators in the factory. Of course, the facility itself is crawling with ghost mechs that need to be destroyed first. We can disable the fabricators inside, but on our way out we are stopped by more ghost mechs and a large familiar red coffin that appears, holding Higgs once again. He sets fire to the tar and summons more ghost mechs to hold Sam back.
Let that yawn out. There's no pretending. I will hold you and protect you. So let love warm you till the morning. Hey, brother. Did you miss me?
Hell no.
Higgs makes a comment about Sam wielding a weapon.
Same as it ever was. Oh. Looks like you decided to trade in that rope for a stick this go-round.
He notes the need for violence in this world, or at least how he recognizes it, that the solution is not just to use a rope. This again is exactly what Higgs wants. He told us at the beginning of the game that he wanted to create a new world, one built on violence. He is doing just that by fabricating weapons and effectively forcing people to use them against each other. He steals Lou's BB pod, and Sam outright asks Higgs if he killed Lou. Higgs, of course, doesn't answer this question, only noting Sam's ignorance on the matter. He gives Sam a final warning that if he does seek out answers, he won't like what he finds. Higgs means to torture Sam. He has a tendril-like wire that he'll wrap around his throat, killing him, and since he's a repatriate, he'll just keep dying over and over again, an endless experience of suffering. Before Sam is choked out, though, a red samurai appears. It bears a striking resemblance to the other ghost mechs, but it seems to be fighting against Higgs. The two have an amazing fight scene, with Higgs wielding his new electric guitar weapon. The samurai manages to best him, slicing off Higgs' left arm and both legs before he is saved by his coffin mech assistants and transported away. Sam wants to know who exactly the Red Samurai is, but the ally disappears before we're given any answers. We can head back to the Magellan to report on the weapons factory. Fragile has determined that Higgs means to spread weapons all over the continent, creating the sticks and willingly providing them to the public. They also found data on another type of fabricator and another factory, but they can't be sure where it is or what it is producing just yet. Sam heads back to his private room to get some rest, but runs into Rainey and Tomorrow on the way there. Rainey shows him a Japanese game they're playing, where they throw a shoe, and its placement will predict the weather they're going to have. And on Tomorrow's shoe, Rainey has placed a ward to keep off harmful spirits.
Hope it's right.
Doesn't it always rain whenever you go outside, though?
Yes. But deep down in my heart, it's really sunny. Always.
Rainey does the same with her boot, and it lands upside down, meaning it will in fact be rainy, but Tomorrow flips it over, determining that it'll actually be sunny. Tomorrow and Rainey have both learned that they are effectively masters of their own fate. They have the ability to control their destiny, their lives, and their disposition. Rainey is having an effect on Tomorrow, and being around her, the connection that she's made with her, if you will, has affected the way that she views the world. Tomorrow has found a family here, and she's happier for it. In a funny end to the scene, Sam tries to kick his own boot off to no avail.
Whatever.
Our next order sees us retrieving a coffin from a nearby armed survivalist's base. This coffin looks distinctly like the one that Higgs uses to transport his mechanical body around. We can take this coffin to the mechanic, who will in turn give us access to the coffin board. He also happens to give us access to the Polaroid camera when bringing his facility online. At this point, our next large goal is to connect the massive city of East Fort Knott, a large and impressive milestone in connecting the Australian continent. The cargo isn't quite ready yet, so Fragile tells Sam to, once again, get some rest. When he does, we're treated to a short intermission, a beautiful shot of Tarman sitting on top of the DHV Magellan with a purple-blue sky in the background. Inside the ship, a small creature is flying around the place, lighting up the walls where it travels. Everyone is sleeping, but Charlie wakes up, saying that he needs to tell Sam something before receding into the ship. Since it is the intermission, and it's a relatively good break point for the center of the game, let's talk about something a bit less serious and feature-heavy, that of the Magellan as a ship and the private room aboard it. As I stated before, the private room has been heavily expanded. We can use private rooms in the various large facilities that we come across, but the private room on the Magellan is the one that we'll use the most often. We can still inspect the BB pod even early in the game when Sam still thinks Lou is inside. We can customize our backpack with different patches that we receive from preppers. We can add extensions that increase our battery or make our jump higher. We can change our hats, the color of our outfits, sunglasses, etc. We can sleep and rest, which recovers our HP and stamina. We can take a shower, which also turns our fluids into grenades, just like the last game. But in this entry, this also removes sunburn and frostbite, two new conditions you can get from traveling in extreme heat or cold. These conditions will actually reflect on Sam, and I was horrified to find this out after I had been pushing Sam ridiculously hard out in the Australian heat, only to return to the Magellan to see him horrifically lobster red. We can also drink our chiral tea and eat cryptobiotes, two actions that become a permanent ritual after taking a rest on the ship. Some of the new additions here are that of the conversations with Dollman and reading books. Dollman will want to talk with us every once in a while, providing some more commentary on the current story beats and characters, as well as just some technical information that we may not have gotten from cutscenes. Reading the books that we receive from various story moments, we can glean more from Dollman and how these stories relate to the game overall. Moby Dick specifically references some Metal Gear stuff, since Metal Gear Solid 5 took such inspiration from that story. And it's no coincidence that Tarman lost his hand in an incident with a whale. We also gain the Polaroid camera about halfway through the game when we visit the mechanic. This camera can be used to take pictures of the Drawbridge girls at various areas of the ship. We can even do this on the bridge and include multiple members of the team. These pictures will then be put in Sam's quarters just beside his bed, memories of his friends. There are some other things here too, statues and decorations that we can get from different survivors that we meet over the course of the game. If we manage to increase their rank high enough, we can get these rewards and encounter them in our room. The whole thing is just a massive upgrade from the first entry, like just about everything else that Death Stranding 2 does. The room feels more personal, more dynamic, and as we advance through the story, you'll see how certain items in the room are used to further the game's theme in ways that I think are truly genius. When we wake up, Heartman asks Sam if there is a child on the ship because he found building blocks in his room. Dollman claims that they could be Tomorrow's because she's taken an interest in a lot of different things. Our next mission is to deliver life support systems to East Fort Knott, which requires us to head all the way back to West Fort Knott and make a massive journey across all of the areas that we've already connected to the network. This is a huge milestone for the journey, meaning that we've essentially traveled from one end of the continent to the other, but we still have one last leg to go, taking us across the mountains and eventually to South Fort Knott, our final destination. Tarman tells us that the tar currents have once again been disrupted, and we encounter the familiar tar wall outside. Sam is pulled in and we're whisked away to another natural disaster battlefield. This time, the soldiers arrive in a flooded building on a raft. They submerge their bandanaed leader in the water, and they pose very cool-like. This ends episode 7 and begins episode 8, Deluge. This chapter is very similar to episode 5, except we're now dealing with a natural disaster themed around water, more specifically floods. We can jump through the water, dealing with far less gravitational impact than normal. We make our way through a flooded building and eventually find the man sitting with his soldiers on a ruined structure, observing the fish. The man notices our presence and we once again have a boss battle with him. We run around the flooded city and defeat the man multiple times while he transports to different areas of the arena. This time around, we have to deal with ice columns that freeze different parts of the environment. Avoiding those, we take down the soldier once again. After he is unconscious, Sam takes an ID off his body and hears crying coming from a bag. Sam, thinking it's a child, looks inside, but he only finds a doll that explodes as he tries to save it. Sam wakes up again, back outside of East Fort Knott. The tar wall is now gone, meaning that the tar currents have gone back to normal. We can head back to the Magellan, where the crew has uncovered some details on the ID that we discovered. The man's name is Neil Vana. Dollman originally mistook the man saying his own name for the word Nirvana. He was a porter that was contracted by Bridges, but not an official member. He was specifically working the Mexican border, on the record bringing over medical supplies, but off the record bringing in drugs and other illegal goods. The crew thinks that Sam might have run into him before because years ago, Sam used to go to counseling in the same building that Neil frequented. Sam doesn't remember him though and heads out to deliver some more orders. He finds Tomorrow eating apples in the hallway though. She seems to be getting greater control over her powers, able to not ripen the apple for a brief moment, but eventually losing it. Sam quickly sees another vision through Neil's eyes. He's checking into a Bridges facility. Our next delivery goal is the Eastern Environmental Observatory, a major milestone as the third observatory in the Australian continent out of 4. Of course, we have to chain together facilities on our way, the first of which is the chronobiologist who needs to examine new types of cryptobiotes. This journey will take us into the snow-capped mountains in the central region of Australia. Traversing this terrain is very similar to the mountain region back in the UCA that we saw in Death Stranding 1. The main distinction here is that this area is just absolutely gorgeous compared to the mountains in the first game. At night, we can see the moon massive and close up. We can see the tops of the clouds during the day, the lower areas of Australia disappearing beneath the fluffy white sky. And at certain points, the sunset crests over the horizon and the pink colors blend in with the white of the snow. You could snap a screenshot in photo mode at any moment and get a picture you could stare at for hours. These views make the journey all worth it in the end because who wouldn't want to save a world that looks like this? After this delivery, we can head back to the bridge of the Magellan, where Fragile updates us on their research into Neil. She received another email from the person claiming to be Heartman, who Charlie thinks is someone on the inside with access to UCA records. Neil was attending therapy sessions led by Lucy, the same woman that Sam was in a relationship with. The same woman that was pregnant with his child, which he originally planned to name Lou or Louise, and the same woman that would take her own life, eventually causing a void out when Sam found her body. Sam reveals that Lucy told him the child wasn't his before the void out happened, and he tries to distance himself from the situation by saying that she was just his shrink, nothing more. Sam sees a vision of Lucy and Neil interacting on his way out of the ship. These two had some sort of past, some sort of connection that we aren't privy to just yet. Our next order is to connect the metagenomicist by capturing a timefall-resistant emu nearby. This connects another facility and gives us the ability to head all the way around the mountain, connecting the F5 East Distribution Center by delivering them chiral microbes to help the tar that's eating away at their facility. This facility is right next to the Tar Lake, where Lakeside Fort Knott used to reside. The whole place was destroyed in a void out. We can head back aboard the Magellan, where Tomorrow has made considerable progress controlling her abilities. On the way out, Sam has a vision of Neil and Lucy in a seemingly intimate moment. It has to be absolutely haunting to see your dead love cheating on you through the man's eyes that she was with. Horrifying stuff. Sam's next task is to take out the second weapons factory, which has now been located by Fragile and the crew. It's a similar setup to the previous mission that we had before. We have to take out the ghost mechs and shut down the fabricators. These ones are a little different though, because they aren't just producing weapons, but ghost mechs themselves. Once we retrieve the data though, Tarman decodes it only to find that the materials used to manufacture the ghost mechs and the routes those materials were obtained through are the same ones that APAC uses. The team at this point become weary of the president because APAC may be working with Higgs. There's nothing concrete, but it's something the team has to be careful about. Our next large goal is to head to South Fort Knott and connect the surrounding areas to the chiral network, the observatory there, the distribution center, etc. On the way, we can connect the adventurer, who we rescued before as an order for the dowser. At this point, Fragile calls us back aboard the ship to talk about Heartman's situation. On the way, Sam finds Tomorrow frustratedly practicing her abilities again. In the middle of the night, Sam is awoken by something lurking in the ship. He finds Heartman leaning in a corner of the vehicle bay, but when he speaks, he has the voice of someone else.
It's me, your old pal, Deadman.
Deadman.
Deadman has been borrowing Heartman's body while he's scouring the beach for answers. This shouldn't be possible, but Heartman has been carrying around Deadman's heart in a small box, which he referred to when we picked him up as his insurance policy.
This here is my insurance.
Deadman's heart could be used to keep Heartman going in the event that his own failed. Sam is clearly happy to see Deadman back, at least in some strange way. He reveals that he lied earlier when he told Sam that someone else falsified BB-28's records. Deadman was the one that did it. He originally meant to give Sam and Lou a way to live free of the past and without people chasing them, but things changed with Lou gone. Deadman has been accessing the network servers from the beach and emailing them as Heartman, digging up information about Lou. Heartman eventually wakes up, of course creating an awkward scenario.
Sam. Poor Hartman here is understandably confused. If you give us a moment alone, I'll explain things to him.
Before we talk about the next episode, I'd like to talk about the aspect of combat that we haven't touched on yet. With Death Stranding 2's upgraded combat system also comes a ton of player agency. This choice doesn't rear its head in just the ways that you can approach combat or the items that you can use. Stealth is now an entirely viable option for most of the game. You could do this in the first game, but it wasn't as smooth as it is now. Just like in the Metal Gear games, we can take down enemies. In addition to this, there are a ton of different items that we can use for this approach. We can use tranquilizer weapons to take out enemies silently, snipers to target them from afar. The system works incredibly well, but the whole point here is that the choice is in your hands. Do you want to fight enemies head on or sneak around and take them out from the dark? That choice makes a huge difference from the first game, where combat encounters generally felt like a one-way road for the most part. That's underselling the original game just a bit, but neither system was smooth enough to present viable options to the player, and we certainly didn't have the amount of variety that we have now. This choice is also present in the BT sections, where stealth was mainly used in the first game. But all of this is meant to make a larger point about player agency in general. Death Stranding 2 is a game that gives the player a lot of freedom. The main campaign is relatively linear if you're just taking on the story missions, but you are allowed to veer off of that path whenever you feel like it. I spent a good few hours in the first sections of Australia just trying to collect resources to build roads. I preferred having these established early on so that my efforts to get these facilities up to a 5-star ranking later in the game would go a bit more smooth. But you don't have to do that at all. You can entirely follow the main campaign and only head back afterwards to deal with infrastructure and completionism efforts. The reason that I bring this up is that Death Stranding 2 is a game that lets you choose a lot. You can choose any item that you want to bring with you when you plan out a delivery. You can choose the path that you take on that delivery. And these things affect your personal experience. Your experience of the same delivery might be a little different than everyone else's. But a large sentiment that I've heard in response to Death Stranding 2 is that it's too easy. This is mainly associated from the fact that Death Stranding 2 gives you access to vehicles very early on in the game, in juxtaposition to the first game that gives you the ability to take your vehicle across the continent, generally avoid conflict, and make deliveries. Now, I'm not saying that this isn't something you can do. You can very much use a vehicle for a lot of the time in the game, but this is also a choice that you make. You aren't forced to do this by any means. Just like you aren't forced to take a ladder in place of a climbing anchor. It's all up to you and how you want to play. To be fair to the people that have made these statements, though, it is more difficult to not take a vehicle when they are so readily available, and reduce the time that it takes to get from one facility to the other. But there are areas of the game that are designed to be incredibly incompatible with vehicles, like the areas around Rainey's shelter and the animal sanctuary, and the mountainous region in the center of the map, including the final areas in the last stretch of the game. It doesn't necessarily seem like the game is easier because of the ability to use vehicles so early, but vehicles are provided to the player as a choice, and that these vehicles are strategically taken away from the player at certain points to increase the difficulty for certain deliveries. With giving the player so much agency, you are going to encounter situations where players make choices that are going to affect their playthrough in ways that they don't like. It's the trade-off with giving players freedom, but it's like using a specific gun throughout the entire game and then complaining that there isn't enough variety. As Sam walks away from his conversation, we reach the end of Episode 8 and the beginning of Episode 9, Puppets. This chapter begins with Drawbridge receiving a distress call from the Eastern Environmental Observatory. They need chiral decontaminators, as their facility is about to be wiped out by contamination. This means trudging all the way to nearly the top of the mountain. The new observatory is the third to be brought online and gives us 75% connection for the continent of Australia, meaning that we're nearing the end of our journey. Fragile contacts Sam to tell him that Rainey isn't doing well. She isn't sure if it's a physical or mental issue, but the doctor from the Motherhood has offered to assist with the issue. Before we head to that facility, though, the president contacts us on a private line. He learned that Drawbridge was suspicious of APAC, that they suspected they might have been involved with the ghost mechs. He did his own investigation and found out that their production is built on old Bridges tech, meaning that Bridges is involved, not APAC. This implicates the UCA as a whole as well. He blames this spread of weapons on the American gun culture from before the Death Stranding.
The UCA's precursor, the United States of America, had a prominent gun culture. Though Americans first took up arms to liberate themselves from British colonial rule, they retained the right to bear arms so that they might defend themselves against future government tyranny.
This is originally why the president wanted Drawbridge to connect the continent, so that a civilian organization was in control of the infrastructure, not a larger organization like the UCA or Bridges. The president then requests that we don't tell anyone about this conversation because we don't truly know who is on our side. Heading back to the Magellan, we're transported to the Motherhood where Rainey is being seen to by the doctor. She uses her chiral hands to transport the baby into a BB pod, finding a healthy baby girl. This can only last for a few minutes though before the child needs to be returned to the womb. This small checkup gives Rainey some peace of mind, though she is still waiting for the balance to be restored in the world so she can actually give birth. I'm not exactly sure how to reckon with still baby syndrome, what it means to the world, what it means for the characters. I think part of trying to deconstruct particularly dense media like this is being honest about what is obvious and what might be a bit more muddled. We know that Rainey stands for progress in society. That much seems obvious. We can glean certain things about how society interacts with progress based on how the people around her treat Rainey. But what does it mean that she has a child that is almost born, but the world won't let it come out? The thing that I first think about is a character that almost doesn't want a child to be born in this world because it's currently so fractured and broken. This is not uncommon in our society, people who choose to not have children because they fear the future. They fear where society is headed towards. They fear tomorrow. Rainey doesn't exhibit these sentiments outwardly. In all actuality, she's more scared for her child's safety than anything. But maybe subconsciously she holds these fears. Maybe this is a metaphor for the declining birth rate in our real world, a direct effect on the economic struggle that people in at least the United States are facing. Kojima could have intended for this piece of the story to mean something else, but at the end of the day, these stories are meant to be interpreted individually. The Doctor then wants to look at Sam's BB pod. The Doctor has an odd feeling about the pod, that the BB inside was there far longer than any other. She checks the production number on the inside and finds that the number is BB00. Lou was one of the first BBs, and her date of birth was 11 years ago. Since they have the production number, they can look it up in the archives and possibly get more information.
You really should try and put this behind you. And digging up the past won't help.
When Sam arrives back on the Magellan, he finds Rainey and Tomorrow talking in the cargo room. They're both comparing the experiences of their worlds. Tomorrow begins to sing to Rainey's belly, and Dollman joins in.
Talk about terrible, Sam. I've heard dogs with better tone.
Tarman calls Sam to tell him they need to upgrade the guns on the Magellan. To do this, they'll have to head to South Fort Knot, but since the tar currents are unstable, it's going to be rocky getting there. Sam and the crew assemble on the bridge to ensure they all get through safely. During the journey, they hit some turbulence and Tarman loses track of his hand. Something seems to have grabbed them, and they're suddenly forced to surface out of the tar, as dangerous as it may be. They arrive in the mountains, but a massive ghost mech has grabbed them, and Higgs has infiltrated the bridge. He has Fragile in his hands, the rest of the crew unable to do anything. He tells the remaining crew that he isn't here for them, just Sam and Fragile, but of course they elect to stay. Tomorrow stands up to Higgs, using her powers to fight him off in a tense struggle. His hands deteriorate and she disrupts the chiralgram on his head, revealing the robot shell underneath. Higgs escapes once again and we have to take out the ghost mech boss outside. We have to draw it away from the ship so that the Magellan can give us supporting fire. The boss itself and its mechanics are very similar to the ghost mech that we fought back in the earlier stages of Australia. We basically aim for its tendrils and try to sever them. Luckily this time we have the Magellan to help us out a bit. After the fight we can head back into the ship. Tarman is working on repairing the Magellan as it's taken a lot of damage, and Fragile decides to head out to retrieve some supplies. Sam heads to speak with Tarman.
Oh, I see you're holding hands now, eh? Hands allow us to connect, form bonds.
The women are heading on their excursion to get supplies. Sam is seeing them off, clearly a little concerned about the group. Sam knows that Fragile is a strong woman, but they're all a part of this family now, and seeing them leave, he gets to experience, for the first time, the feeling that others feel about him when he heads out on a delivery. Sam's next goal is to head to South Fort Knot. On the way, we can connect the Phantom Smith, who needs us to retrieve his stranded cargo from a dangerous area. The President contacts us here, once again on a private line. He has become suspicious of Charlie and is having trouble even verifying his identity. We then head out, connecting South Fort Knot by delivering a chiral field controller. This is a longer journey, finally seeing Sam descend the snowy mountaintop and enter the final stretch of this expedition. The President contacts us on a private line, once again, telling us that he's been following the money that was provided to Drawbridge. He confirmed that it came from Bridges. This means that Drawbridge is no longer technically independent. People may misread the expedition's intentions now, leading them to believe this was no more than a land grab for the UCA, like Sam always suspected. But Sam awakens in Hartman's lab. He shows Sam what he's learned by looking into Lou's serial number. The original plan for the chiral network only required one bridge baby, designated BB00. The R&D on this didn't work, and they required more BBs. Lou was then placed in storage and given the BB-28 moniker years later. This could be an effort by Bridges to cover up their experiments. South Fort Knot has prepared newly designed weapons for the Magellan, created by the one that originally crafted the ship. Our next goal is to transport these back to Tarman. The president then once again worsens the situation, telling us that Bridges even had a hand in funding the Magellan itself. We then head back to the ship. Tarman is finishing the repairs and the women are on their way home as well. Our final goal is to link up the last environmental observatory. On our way through, though, we have to take out some chiral jammers at an armed survivalist base, as we can't use our Cupid with these machines still functioning. And once we arrive, ghost mechs are on our tail. The dog-like robots that carried around Higgs earlier are here now, a far stronger enemy than the small grunts that we've fought before. Taking all of the enemies out, we can finally bring the facility online, but just as soon as we get done talking to its sole resident, Higgs shows up again. He attacks Sam with his flamethrower guitar, and Sam can't even move to fight back or get away. Remember, Higgs' goal this time around is not to bring about the last stranding, but to make Sam suffer as much as he can. Sam dies from the flames and repatriates, but as soon as he comes back, he's covered in flames once again. The strange fire that he's placed on Sam's body is fed by chiralium. Since he's covered in chiralium when he comes back from the dead, the flames just start up again. His goal here isn't just to put Sam through physical pain, but to enjoy the mental anguish as well. Eventually, Higgs starts singing a song, setting this torture to a backdrop of BB's theme.
I'll stay with you by your side, close your tired eyes, and I'll wait, and soon I'll see your smile in our dream, and
As Sam, we can force him to push on, to move forward, but we succumb to the flames over and over again. Eventually, Tomorrow and Fragile show up to help Sam. Tomorrow takes out Higgs' legion of ghost mechs, once again in stylish and incredible form. Higgs is met with a similar fate as their last meeting, absolutely obliterated by the girl. Just as the tides seem to turn, the Magellan shows up to overwhelm him with firepower. Fragile and Tomorrow reach Sam after Higgs escapes, but they can't do anything to save him. He's just dying over and over again, physical pain repeated until he dies and then comes back. Luckily, the rain eventually comes to douse these flames. In the Magellan, Sam's body has taken quite the toll. Luckily, the crew have successfully restored his body. They theorize that he may have made a full recovery, but his ka, or his spirit, may be damaged. The crew is getting ready for their final objective to be complete, and also to have a difficult conversation with Sam about this whole journey. This next cutscene is from the perspective of someone a part of the crew, seemingly Tomorrow, as she brings Sam flowers and checks on the pod. Sam wakes up and realizes that something isn't right with Lou. Dollman then reveals his purpose on this mission, to help Sam process the trauma of losing his child. Of course, Sam doesn't want to believe this. He's seen Lou the entire time. We've even begun to see Lou. We could interact with Lou and rock her back into a calm mood when taking a fall. But when Sam goes to prove Dollman wrong, he realizes what the pod really looks like. It's cracked, unlit, covered in spiderwebs and dust. Dollman has been operating Sam's Odra deck throughout this journey. The pod was essentially doing nothing.
In this way, we believed we could help you come to terms with Lou's death.
Wait, what do you mean Lou's death? What are you talking about?
Please understand, Sam. We never meant to string you along.
Fragile was only worried about you.
This was why Sam was invited on this expedition in the first place. Fragile wanted Sam to move on, to process everything.
I've been alone this whole time.
You're wrong. Death can tear us apart. We'll always be connected.
Fragile reassures Sam that he won't ever be alone. The crew just proved this by saving him. They were the only reason that he was able to make it out alive. But it doesn't make facing reality any easier for Sam. He suffered the greatest loss that a human could face, and the grief comes hard, hitting like a rock to the teeth. Since we're already on the subject of connections, we should probably talk about this aspect of gameplay. As I already stated before, Death Stranding 2 is a single-player game, but it has a connection to a wider player-inhabited meta world. Structures that players build will show up in your world and yours and theirs. This system has been changed somewhat since last time around, though. This is mainly due to the skill system that Death Stranding 2 introduces. These are called A-Pass enhancements, and despite me bringing them up now, they are probably one of the biggest systems in the entire game and are introduced pretty early on. It generally works the same as any other skill tree. We get available memory from increasing the star ranks of various facilities around the continent, and we can use this memory to buy new skills on the tree. These skills cover a wide range of gameplay. There are skills that focus on exploration, like the augmented terrain scanner that increases the range of the item, or the sensor mode change that reduces the width of this scanner in the interest of increasing its range. There are combat-specific improvements, like the improved MP bullets enhancement that increases the accuracy and power of these specific weapons, or the battery discharger that allows us to short out Sam's battery to shock enemies that are nearby. There's stealth-specific improvements that neutralize the sound Sam makes, a proximity alarm that alerts us to close attacks, or a vitals indicator that allows us to see how close enemies are to being knocked out. And there are servicemanship-specific improvements like faster order preparation, more accurate weather analysis, or a timefall generator that allows us to gain battery when Sam is caught in timefall. All of these skills allow, once again, for more player agency. They allow the player to choose which areas that they'd like to focus on in the short term. Of course, leveling up every facility to 5 stars will eventually give you access to all of these skills, but that doesn't happen until you're at the end of the game, or even deep into the post-game. But the final category of skills, the bridge link enhancements, will actually affect how the game interacts with other players' structures. The sharing boost in particular increases the amount of structures that we'll see in our game that come from other players. This can be incredibly useful for getting a variety of items into your world without having to build them. Bridges that can help you get over canyons, ladders that can help you scale cliffs, and roads that can help you traverse the world much more safely. But this comes with the added impact of visual clutter. Almost surely, you will begin to see a ton of order requests, abandoned vehicles, and signs littered outside of every single facility. These certainly detract from quite a bit of the world, but they also introduce a lot of activity to these frequented areas. In Death Stranding 2, it becomes a lot more visually clear which areas players are frequenting and which ones they are not. But it can't be denied that the focus of this game is far less on isolation than the first game was. I wanted to establish this before the finale of the game, because I think it's important in understanding the themes that the game is going for. Aside from narrative and thematic implications, the A-Pass enhancements work incredibly well as a gameplay system. It adds even more variety to gameplay, and we haven't even gotten into the various items that the game introduces, of which there are many. It also just adds some form of progression, which honestly makes the long journeys through the sometimes barren world feel more rewarding. I should also note a bit of praise here, that they did allow you to upgrade the roads in this entry. In Death Stranding 1, you could construct roads with a large amount of materials. Small chunks of these roads could be formed, essentially creating a large highway over the world, making travel in vehicles far easier. In Death Stranding 2, you can do the same thing, but the roads can now be upgraded to level 2, with a lot more materials, mind you, but it can be done. And these upgraded roads have a small roof over top of them that prevents your vehicle from getting hit with timefall. You also get a small speed boost when on these level 2 roads. The game also adds in monorails, which generally connect 2 large settlements and a mine. Mines can be used to convert chiral crystals into large supplies of different resources. The monorails are perfect for transporting these materials, especially if you need to build roads or just want to complete a large amount of orders all at once. These monorails also must be constructed, though, by delivering materials to different terminals, and you can't use a monorail if there are any sections missing. This whole system, like all the others, are much improved from the first game, because there is essentially an endless supply of resources from the mines. You never really have to worry about running out of resources from a facility. This is the easiest way to obtain them, but if your facilities are running low, you can always head to a mine on the map and just create more. It essentially fixes a problem that the first game had. Resources were technically infinite in that game as well, but you might have had to go out of your way to get them. Complete a delivery, steal from a bandit camp. Getting the mine up and running and transporting the materials is still a hurdle, though. Once again, it's about giving the player a choice, letting them choose how they'd like to get the materials. As Sam realizes and processes his grief, we end episode 9 and begin episode 10, Isolation. Sam is resting aboard the Magellan when Charlie calls him in for the final mission, one more facility to bring online. On the way out, Sam doesn't bring the pod. We have to head back to Hartman's lab to accept the next order. The hydrologist is controlling the facility now, and she gives us a network stabilizer that we can take to the F7 North Distribution Center. This is our longest order by far, and since we're heading to the other side of the mountain, we can choose to head around the right or left side, as well as taking the path directly over the top. This journey, like the endgame final one from the first game, allows us to reflect on the experience that we've had. It's a good long time, not with the Drawbridge crew, not with the characters that we've met along the way, just with Sam. And Sam is alone in his grief now, realizing that Lou truly is gone. This is why he didn't even bring the pod with him. Part of me thinks that Sam knew the entire time, that he was trying to convince himself that it wasn't true, and now he has to face it, and this journey cements that. One more time before the end, we're going to feel that isolation, that void, that quiet. Any path that we eventually take leads us to bringing the distribution center online. We're then once again met with a tar wall outside of the shelter. This time, Sam is not pulled into the tar, but given a path to walk through. Before we get into the next fight with our mysterious friend, let's talk about the weapons and items in Death Stranding 2, because there are a lot. I've talked quite a bit at this point about the variety that this game has, and it does have a ton of variety, but a lot of that variety comes from the different items that we can unlock and equip throughout the game. Most of these come from either story unlocks or leveling up the various facilities across Australia and Mexico. When I first played through the game, I barely leveled up any of the facilities outside of the early ones before beating the story. I realized this was a massive mistake when I went back through and got 5 stars on all of them, because there were a ton of weapons that I was missing by not unlocking these items early on. A lot of the rewards that you receive are just higher ranked versions of previous weapons. For example, you gain the assault rifle by default, but you gain the level 2 version by getting the C1 South Distribution Center to level 4. I won't go in depth on the basic weapons, just short comments on their variants and small differences. The assault rifle itself is a fast weapon with a high fire rate and a medium capacity. The level 2 version gives you the ability to attack BTs, which most of the second rank versions of weapons do. There's also the lightweight version of the assault rifle that has its own various ranks. These are achieved from the former geophysics research lab. There's the Bola gun, returning from the first game, which throws out a sort of twirling strand that can incapacitate enemies. You can unlock a stun version later in the game from the inventor. There's the grenade launcher and the lightweight grenade launcher, the machine gun and lightweight machine gun, the shotgun and lightweight shotgun. There's also a Trank sniper rifle, an entirely new weapon for this game, specifically allowing you to go in stealthily. There's a whole line and variety of handguns: the machine pistol, the maser handgun, the grenade pistol, the big bore handgun, the SL machine pistol, and the SL Trank handgun. There's of course the sticky gun that we can use to steal cargo off the backs of thieves, a rocket box which when deployed launches multiple rockets at its target, the regular and lightweight variant of the grenade launcher, and the quadruple rocket launcher, one of the highest damaging weapons in the game. One of the coolest and newest additions in the game is that of the floating sentry gun, a deployable piece of equipment that floats around us and attacks enemies on its own. There's also the chiral shock cannon, which uses chiral crystals as its ammunition, and the tar cannon that can mainly be used to put out fires, but also to attack enemies. In addition to all of these ranged weapons, there are a variety of melee weapons and grenades we can use. There are multiple levels of stick rods, basically a long bow staff that can be non-electric or electric depending on the version. There's the Blood Boomerang, a fantastic new weapon that pulls blood from Sam's body and is particularly effective against BTs. There's the Battle Guitar, which we unlock later in the game, that also uses chiral crystals as its ammunition source. It can be used as a melee weapon as well, striking your foes with the power of music. And of course you can pick up Ghost Blades by the ghost mechs that we defeat when rescuing Tomorrow. There are blood grenades, X grenades, decoy grenades to distract enemies, BT hollow grenades, MP grenades, remote stun bombs, smoke grenades, stealth hollow grenades. The list goes on and on. There's even a grenade specifically used for capturing large BTs, which gives you a crystal which you can deploy later in combat to summon the BT on your side. In addition to all of this, at a certain point in the game, you will gain the ability to spend crystals during combat and call in the Magellan to lay down different versions of firepower for you. Outside of the pieces of combat equipment that we can unlock, we can also gain access to a variety of different items that allow for customization and utility in making deliveries. We can get additional upgrades for our vehicles, like accessing more armor or batteries. We can get a ton of backpack devices, even more this time around. Spare ammo packs that allow us to carry more bullets, extra battery, or even thermal pads. We can get backpack accessories like charms that we attach to the pack that adjust our stats or the way that we play. We can get battle skeletons designed to be utilized across specific types of terrain. We can unlock higher levels of construction for items that we already previously unlocked. We can get gloves that adjust our playstyle or even help us out in combat. We can collect a ton of different colors that we can use on our hats, glasses, suits, etc. We can even unlock specific hats, masks, and suits for Sam to wear, and different decals for the BB pod. There's also new structures in this game, in addition to the returning ones like bridges, post boxes, watchtowers, timefall shelters, generators, zip lines, safe houses, jump ramps, chiral bridges, and cargo catapults. The transponder allows us to effectively jump or fast travel to any other transponder or facility in the world. This extends the fast travel that we can use with the Magellan, but allows for simple travel around the world once they are built and established. The Hot Spring Digger, probably my favorite new building, is a bit more complicated. We can only build these on specific areas where hot springs are located. We have to find them in the world, build the structure, and we will gain access to a new hot spring. These springs can be bathed in, giving us specific buffs based on the hot spring we use. We can use these to teleport around the world as well though, and sometimes take a look at the night sky. The sky holds constellations, some whales or animals, and even a constellation of Kojima himself. There are so many things that this game has in store, so many items and ways to approach combat, or even just making your way across Australia. If you've beaten the game and completed the story, but you never went to level up all of the facilities, you still haven't even seen half of the utility, progression, and design that this game has to offer. There are so many awesome little things that are hidden behind even just the first few levels of a facility. I was impressed with Death Stranding's scope the first time that I played it, but with the second game, that reaction has only grown. The scope of this game is just insane. It feels like a world, some place that isn't necessarily living or breathing because it isn't supposed to be. But by the time you're done with the game, it feels like you've maybe caused that world to gain a few breaths back, a few pumps of the heart, and it isn't so dead after all. That's impact. This ends episode 10 and begins episode 11, Quake. On the other side, Sam is inside of a stopped subway car with strange lit-up butterfly creatures flying all around. He sees shadows running through the station. This section is themed around Earth or the natural disaster of quakes. We move through the station, eventually seeing our ethereal soldiers arrive on the roof, somehow switching their gravity. We have a similar battle to the other sections, defeating enemies across buildings that have been obliterated by earthquakes. Some of the rubble seems to float, though, just as strange and uncooperative as the other arenas we've fought Neil in. The final section of fights takes place in a ruined train station, and Neil's soldiers can all walk on the ceiling. We eventually chase Neil up the place, and he collapses into one of the train car seats, smoking a cigarette as he watches the fires outside. We're transported back to those old streets as meteors fall from the sky. A small boy is struck with some debris and marked on his hand. He cries out for help, but only a small girl arrives to assist him. She patches him up and leads him through the flames. The two are hit by flaming debris, and the girl is trapped under the rubble. As he goes to save her, he hears his parents off in the distance and sees massive BTs stalking the streets. Scared, the child runs off to find his family. Neil is living his guilt, failing to save the girl that he met that day, after she did the same for him. He takes off a small coffin necklace and rushes to the other side of the train car. Sam was viewing this whole scene, and Dollman thinks Neil was trying to communicate with him. As Sam, we run off into the train car, chasing Neil down the structure. As we reach the end, Sam is shifted to the roof, and we run through this platform of overturned cars, eventually arriving on a satellite dish. A beautiful, surreal section that really fulfills a climax for this set of disaster-themed battle arenas. Neil appears here with some flowers for Sam on their big date, but the flowers are engulfed in flame and we have our final battle with Neil. We chase him around this satellite dish just like we did before, but he moves a lot faster this time around, now unshackled by the soldiers that were with him, but also unprotected by them. The dish begins to collapse throughout the battle, but we eventually defeat him.
Are you Sam? What, Sam?
Sam!
Neil is eventually crushed by rubble and Sam pulls him out. He's back in plain clothes again and starts apologizing to Sam. He gives him the coffin necklace, telling him it's from Lucy. He tells Sam to keep Lou safe, and as Sam touches him, we get a flashback. We see Neil's memories in full, fleshing out the entire tale. Neil is arriving for his first therapy session with Lucy. He tries to smoke a cigarette, but she stops him. As he tells her about his porter work, we don't see the middle of their session, only a short scene as Neil heads for the door. Lucy reveals that she is the young girl that Neil left in those flaming streets that night. She smacks him and the two embrace, both clearly having very complicated feelings about the incident. Neil is then meeting with a member of Bridges, being reprimanded for his smuggling operations. He's being told that he has to keep smuggling for them or he'll be brought to justice for the things that they made him do. Neil then tells Lucy about this in therapy, finally opening up about what Bridges is forcing him to do. Bridges was forcing him to smuggle stillborn mothers into the country for their experiments into the chiral network. Neil is clearly distressed by this work, feeling immense guilt for his actions, forced or not. We then see Neil and Lucy in her office late one night. She notices a car outside that she suspects is watching her. Neil takes a picture of it, spotting it as a security vehicle. During their next session, Lucy is revealing that she's pregnant with Sam's child. She shows Neil the results. She already had tests done, and she's sure that Neil isn't the father. Neil is angered when Lucy tries to tell him their relationship was a mistake. She officially rejects him, declaring their affair over. As Neil leaves, Lucy unwraps a gift from the man, a necklace that bears the symbol marked on both of their hands during that awful night they shared as children. Sam wakes back up in the real world.
Well, it would seem that Neil has vanished. Whether he managed to achieve some form of nirvana, I couldn't say, but I doubt we'll be seeing him again.
Sam now has the cancer symbol necklace with the small coffin charm. Fragile talks to Sam aboard the Magellan. The coffin necklace was a memory drive, full of information that Lucy had found about Neil's smuggling operation and Bridge's involvement in the shipment of brain-dead pregnant women. She also reveals that Sam was the child's real father. Lucy lied to Sam because she knew that Bridges would have used the baby as a test subject. It was the first child of a repatriate, and she wanted to keep the baby safe. She gave Neil the necklace as a way to tell Sam the truth down the line. The ship enters alert and the entire crew gathers aboard the bridge. Charlie has called a mission briefing to go over their final expedition, the last order before connecting the entirety of the chiral network. Ghost mechs have surrounded Terminal Fort Knot and are ready for us to attack. Tarman is set to navigation, Rainey is set to radar, Heartman is controlling the ship's cannons, and Tomorrow is meant to man the miniguns. The DHV can only support us within the chiral network, but our path is in a dead zone. We can use 2 way stations along the way to expand the chiral network before we reach the final destination. Before Sam leaves, Fragile gives him a few parting words.
Coming on this expedition was meant to help you find the strength to carry on. And you have. We all know you've got this.
Before we move on to the final stretch, it's probably a good time to talk about all of the extra stuff that we can do around the world. Our journey to connect the network was certainly held up by Drawbridge, but we also couldn't complete it without connecting these facilities along the way. Every facility inhabitant has their own story, their own theme, and their own rewards to obtain. When making deliveries to facilities, we can obtain a certain amount of likes for doing so. These likes contribute to the facility's star rating, leveling them up to a max level of 5. Each level obtained will give us a reward, and each one is different. Some facilities, like the Lone Gunman, will give us access to certain weapons, like snipers and tranquilized weapons. The Chronobiologist will give us access to a bunch of different backpack accessories that will change specific stats in the way that we play the game. A lot of these facilities will give us extra information when we gain these new ranks. If we unlock a new weapon, we can talk to the facility inhabitant about that weapon as they describe how it works. The person inside of the facility will also post on the social media service that we can access on Sam's chiral ring. This system basically replaces the emails that we would receive in the first game. This supplements narrative information, developments on new technology, new revelations about the Death Stranding and the creatures around the world. But a few of these facilities actually have pretty in-depth side quests attached to them. The Musician gifts us with various soundtracks that we can play on the music player that we now have access to, and holds a story about trying to identify a chiral creature making strange noises. The Animal Shelter allows us to capture animals from around the environment and deliver them back to the shelter, and then watch these rescued creatures roam around outside of the place. The Pizza Chef is one of my favorites, a man whose sole passion is creating and perfecting the perfect pizza, but he also knows how to fight with his hands. He can teach us the arts of pizza foo, leveling up our hand-to-hand game, and also equipping us with some fantastic outfits and pizza dough weapons we can use to unleash hell on our enemies. The Adventurer, the man we rescued and delivered to the Dowser's shelter, is constantly getting lost in various places around the world. We have to keep rescuing him and carrying his body back to his shelter. He's committed to the spirit of adventure and discovery, though, so who can stop him? The Ghost Hunter is a particularly interesting facility. After we unlock his facility and bring it online, he'll start giving us sub-orders to investigate ghost activities around the continent. The first of which is a case of some phantom bikes being summoned at night. When we find these bikes, we are transported to a racetrack and forced to fight these bikes while speeding down these floating roads in the sky. The fisherman tasks us with taking on the monster of the nearby lake, a Nessie-like figure that he's been hunting for a while. These things, even just the small pieces of character that we get from each of these people, are such great additions to the sequel. It gives you a reason to go back and get 5 stars on all of the facilities. There are not only tangible rewards in weapons and items, but rewards in new experiences and narrative development. This is where a lot of the world is developed as well. These posts on the social media service aren't just inconsequential nonsense, it's creating the fundamental fabric that this world stands on. One criticism that I do have for the system, though, is the fact that they removed the stars that you were rewarded with in the previous entry. In Death Stranding, when you level up a facility to the max, you would get a star sticker added to Sam's porter suit. This was pretty cool because after you got all of the facilities up to 5 stars, you would have a ton of stars on your suit. It was wearable proof that you effectively did everything the game had in store for you, and that was reflected in your outfit. But in Death Stranding 2, you get a patch for getting each facility to 5 stars, and you unlock their hologram, which you can place on your facilities throughout the world. This is still interesting, but you can only put so many patches on your backpack, so you can never wear them all, and it's just not as satisfying as completing your pant leg star collection. A lot of the prepper characters are celebrities or industry cameos, just like the first game. Obviously, a few of these are pretty high profile, but there's a lot that I haven't seen talked about anywhere else. Sam is of course played by Norman Reedus, famed for his appearance as Daryl in The Walking Dead. Fragile is played by Léa Seydoux, a French actress appearing in movies like Blue is the Warmest Color, a couple of the Daniel Craig James Bond films, and Mission Impossible 4. Tarman's appearance is modeled after George Miller, the famed Australian director known for the Mad Max films. Higgs is portrayed by Troy Baker, probably one of the most prolific modern voice actors in the video game industry. Tomorrow is portrayed by Elle Fanning, an American actress who appeared in movies like Maleficent, A Complete Unknown, and The Neon Demon. The Neon Demon was directed by Nicholas Winding Refn, whose appearance is used for the Heartman character once again. He also directed movies like Drive and Only God Forgives. Rainey is portrayed by Shioli Kutsuna, mostly known for her role as Yukio in Deadpool 2. Dollman is modeled after Faith Aiken, a director known for his film Head On, but the character is voiced by Jonathan Rumi, who portrayed Jesus in the television series The Chosen. The President is played by Alistair Duncan, known for his voice roles as Senator Armstrong in Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance and Mimir in God of War 2018. Neil is portrayed by Luca Marinelli, an Italian actor that was in the Old Guard films and Rainbow: A Private Affair. Lucy is played by Alyssa Young, a German actress who played Mary of Nazareth in a 2012 film and starred in a critically acclaimed German movie titled A Matter of Life. And the Doctor is portrayed by Deborah Wilson, known more recently for her various roles in video games like Destiny, Avowed, and the Oblivion remake, but she was also originally on the sketch comedy show Mad TV from the first season to the 8th. A lot of the prepper characters are also notable people, though, as Kojima has a track record of just scanning his friends or people he likes and then putting them into his games. Gen Hoshino, as we already talked about, is a Japanese pop artist and appears as the musician. Scottish synth pop band Churches appears as the animal shelter inhabitants. Koichi Yamanoa, also known as the artist Grim Grim, appears as the tar therapist. Both of the co-directors of the video game Stray appear in the game. Vivian Mermet-Guyane plays Leon Easton at East Fort Knott, and Kolas Kula plays the Lone Commander. A producer of Stray, Swan Martin Rajay, appears in the game as Ridge Frost at the Eastern Environmental Observatory. Woodkid appears directly in the game as the mechanic. Craig Malenka, the Vice President of Global Marketing at Sony Interactive Entertainment, appears as Glenn Rain at the Rainbow Valley facility. Cécile Brun, one half of the French art duo Atelier Cento, appears as the Dowser. The other half of Atelier Cento, Olivier Pritchard, appears as Peter Gates at the Western Environmental Observatory. Errolson Hugh, the founder of the clothing brand Acronym, which partnered to create some Death Stranding 2 swag, plays Alex Weatherstone at the former Geophysics Research Lab. John McElroy, a former director at Annapurna Interactive, appears as the inventor. Kate Siegel, an actress known for her appearance in The Haunting of Hill House, plays Olivia Westbury at West Fort Knott. the director of Haunting of Hill House and other shows like Midnight Mass, and husband of Kate Siegel, Mike Flanagan, appears in the game as well as Mike Northcote at the Northern Environmental Observatory. Lauren Tsai, a visual artist, appears in the game as the artist. She was also in the season of Terrace House that took place in Hawaii, if anyone has ever seen that show. Liv Corfixon, an actress that was in Only God Forgives, who is also married to Nicholas Winding Refn, plays the hydrologist. Both of Refn's daughters are also in the game, both having roles in different films like Secrets We Keep and Copenhagen Cowboy. Lola appears as the metagenomicist, and Lizzie Liu appears as the chronobiologist. Ma Dong-seok is an actor known for many films, The Outlaw, The Roundup, and Train to Busan, to just name a few. He appears as Samson Hook from the F2 Distribution Center. Mamoru Oshii, the acclaimed director of Ghost in the Shell, plays the pizza chef. Molly Quinn, an actor known for her role in the show Castle, but also appeared in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 as Molly Ravager, plays La Madra at Via Libre. Ray Kalaschi, the director of product development at XDev, a PlayStation-owned support studio who's helped out with games like Returnal, Dreams, Detroit Become Human, and even Death Stranding 2, appears as Benjamin Rivera at the C1 South Distribution Center. S.S. Rajamouli, the director of the fantastic film RRR, and his son, S.S. Karthikeya, both appear in the game as the Adventurer and the Adventurer's son. And the first VTuber cameo appearance in Death Stranding is Usada Pecora, who appears as the data scientist. Danny and Michael Philippou, known as YouTubers Raka Raka, and also directors of the film Talk to Me and Bring Her Back, appear as the duo Mr. Impossible. There's a ton more. Just about every person that appears as a facility personnel in this game is known for something. A producer at Sony, a director of some film that Kojima liked, etc. As Fragile gives Sam her final words of encouragement before the last stretch, we end episode 11 and begin episode 12, Fragile. Before heading out, the president contacts Sam once again, telling him that they have determined that once the final site is connected, 3 plate gates should appear, as opposed to their initially expected 1. He also has more information on Higgs and APAC, but he'll only tell us what he found when we finally bring Terminal Fort Knott online. Our final destination is heading south from the base of the mountains. The snow quickly gives way to a rocky terrain, and fire begins to fall from the sky. Ghost mechs are at every roadblock, ready to prevent our path forward. We take out leagues of them, with the DHV Magellan providing us with fire support along the way. It is a massive battle to bring every chiral way station online. The forests ahead of us are burning. Some of the most beautiful scenery in this game is the trees aflame on the horizon as we approach, cargo in hand. Once we bring the second way station online, Rainey appears on the deck of the Magellan and uses her ability to put out the fires in the area. With the final way station online, we can head to Terminal Fort Knott, the last connection we need to make. An army of ghost mechs is standing at the bridge in front of us, though. We have to take them all out, a one-man army fighting against a legion. But not really one man, because our friends are at our backs, providing us support. And they aren't just at our backs now, they've been there the whole time. Even if we didn't notice it or pay attention, all of these people have brought us here, to this moment. They've given us the opportunity to fight this battle. Eventually, Sam reaches the latter half of the bridge and the Red Samurai appears again. This samurai finally reveals his identity. It's Deadman. His body has been placed in this suit, and his wandering consciousness from the beach has inhabited the mech, helping us along the way.
Death can't tear us apart.
Sam runs along the bridge after Deadman provides his assistance, and another large ghost mech boss appears. We have a fight with it, as we have to target its weak points on the tentacles. Once we defeat it, the bridge is clear, the final journey is done, and Terminal Fort Knott is before us, ready to be connected. We bring the facility online, and of course, Higgs interrupts us. Sam can't manage to shoot him, and Higgs is done toying with Sam. He just wants to get him now. Fortunately, the Magellan phases through the facility elevator, and its crane destroys Higgs' body. He's still alive, though, and taunts Fragile about Lou's death. He has left a permanent, lasting wound in her. It's exactly what he wanted to do. Fragile decides to use his guitar weapon to blast Higgs' robotic body, but it still doesn't kill him. Nothing seems to at this point. They unload bullets into him, hit him with the flamethrower, and Higgs can only say this.
I'll take the damage and the guts. I don't break that easy.
What?
I'll take the damage and the guts. I don't break that easy.
Calling back to what Fragile said in the first game. Endlessly taunting the pair even in death. This is always what he meant to do, was haunt Fragile and Sam, not just kill them, but to scar them. Fragile finally crushes Higgs' skull, or at least this ghost mech corporeal form that he's obtained. But the revenge that Sam and Fragile get from this isn't as satisfying as they expected it to be. The scars are still there. Higgs' shattered corpse is left on the ground, and Sam and Fragile head back to the ship. With this, the Australian continent has been connected. Our mission is complete, but when Sam heads to the bridge, he finds everyone asleep, and the president on board. He is thanking Sam for completing the mission. Now that Australia is connected, the door is open to bring other continents online. He fully admits to lying to Sam at this point, and supporting Higgs by providing him a ghost mech army to fight with. This whole situation was orchestrated to give Sam the motivation to work with others, and to bring the continent on the network, but also to push Drawbridge to use weapons of their own to fight back. The president begins to speak as we at this point, not himself, a part of a larger sort of whole. They, AIPAC, plan to extend their support to new continents. They will relieve humanity of their need for weapons, movement, and even porters entirely. They see this as their solution to overcoming the Death Stranding. No more risk of causing void outs because humans never need to move again. When we connected the continents, APAS got a massive amount of data on the Death Stranding. The Death Stranding was a means to an end, that end being bringing out an extinction event. The Death Stranding would force people to connect with one another. He says that extinction just breeds new evolution. New species emerge and change and evolve. It's humanity's time to die so that a new species can evolve. But this is not APAS's intention. They plan to prevent all forms of humanity from traveling, to bring humans under their complete control and management. The president clarifies, though, that he, or the hive mind that he's seemingly a part of, is not APAS. It's just a tool. Sam asks him what he is, and his face begins to shift into different people, changing genders, skin color, age in a matter of moments. His face finally changes into the Elder, one of the preppers you'll remember from the first game. After the North American network was completed, there was a massive void out in UCA territory. This hit one of the APAS servers and the Elder's shelter. 4,000 people caught in the blast. The face then shifts back to the president. Even though they were caught in the blast, their connection wasn't severed. Suddenly, Sam finds himself transported to a beach, lined with massive black monoliths, begetting imagery from 2001: A Space Odyssey or Evangelion. We follow the president around this beach as he monologues to us about what happened. All of those caught in the void out found themselves on this beach. All of their souls, along with APAS, were merged together into one entity. Somehow this entity is capable of managing every aspect of humanity's existence. APAS is even connected to the BTs, the gazers that watch our movements and seek out humans. Preventing movement will cause humanity to stagnate, to no longer evolve, but at least they won't be extinct. But the president says something interesting here.
You will leave your mortal flesh behind and transition to an eternal existence within the expanse of the Chiroverse.
My immediate interpretation of this statement is that human lives will now be integrated into this entity as well and become a part of the Watchers upon death. But this could be more symbolic. By not moving, humanity has relinquished the reliance on their flesh, and they will effectively become a part of the Chiroverse. Since it rules every aspect of their life, it will become an extension of themselves. This is very obviously furthering that internet allegory that the game has been pushing so hard up until now. And the fact that the president focuses on the lack of coming movement that humanity will have also furthers this theory. an idea, a sort of technological advancement that at once connects humanity, but also causes them to stagnate, to bring development and evolution of not just the physical species, but the ideologies that control their actions to a crawl. If you've played Metal Gear Solid 2, then I'm sure you're getting some strong flashbacks to the final moments of that game. The president then stops, flipping through the pages of a book. APAS will keep watching humanity. They will regulate other species. They will ensure that humanity continues to exist. This is everything that humanity has wanted, to stave off extinction, to prevent void-outs, to achieve safety. But the cost is obviously far too much. Evolution, choice, and agency are far more important to humanity than the ability to live. Charlie then arrives from the water, stopping the president's monologue. He appears in full body and starts a dance number as he starts to sing BB's theme.
So let love warm you till the morning. Good God.
During this, he reveals his true identity. It was Die Hard Man all along. BB's theme is a pretty important song for this part of the game, so it's about time we talked about Death Stranding 2's music. There are a lot of songs in Death Stranding 2, and I mean a lot. There are 53 licensed songs alone, and a ton of songs on the Ludwig Forssell/Woodkid composed original soundtrack for the game. While I will be talking about both songs, I will only be able to show the original soundtrack songs in this video. I can talk about the songs, but I can't actually show them here. There will be a version on my Patreon with those songs in it, so if you'd like to support the channel and watch the version of the video with licensed songs, go check it out in the description. But there are a lot of songs in this game that have big thematic implications. A lot of our journeys in Death Stranding 2 are set to these songs, just like the first game. A small title and artist will pop up, letting us know what music is serving as the score for our journey. These pop-ups generally come at impactful moments in our adventure, when a new facility is cresting over the horizon, when we've reached the end of a long journey, when we're isolated and the silence just has to be filled. There's obviously Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, a song that doesn't play as one of these punctuating tracks, but a song that is featured heavily throughout the narrative of the game. A song that oozes pure optimism, a song about a man that's trapped in the pit of despair, but decides that sadness will not defeat him. This functions almost as Rainy's theme in the game. The song introduces her, and it seems to reflect her almost unstoppable optimism once she meets the bridge's crew. It also functions as a representation of general happiness displayed in the game. Sam's life before Lou was taken away from him, and the Drawbridge crew when they've settled in and found their own family. Some songs were created for the game, like Caroline Polachek's On the Beach. This song's lyrics were created for the game, but the actual track was created years ago by Polachek and her writing partner during a snowstorm. Since she was a late addition to the game, it was used since it was already pretty much formulated as a song. The song's lyrics directly reference Tomorrow, the character, but also this double entendre that the game has created, also standing for the future. It also references the River Sanzu, something that Polachek took from her conversations with Kojima and what the game really meant. The Sanzu River is sort of like a Japanese version of the River Styx, a place where one must cross over after death. It represents a sort of spiritual transition. This whole song is backed by low, heavy synths and a sort of waving tone, reaching beautiful heights and terrifying lows. It's complemented by Polachek's gorgeous vocals and, of course, modulated, but if you've ever seen Polachek perform live, you know that she can also just do that with her voice, which is insane. Another particularly large highlight from the licensed songs is Dancing with Ghosts by Hania Rani and Patrick Watson. A duet where one half sounds almost ethereal. A specter singing hollow from the other side materializes about a minute into the song, a melancholic tune about saying goodbye, backed by a gorgeous melody. The Japanese stylings of Gen Hoshino are very common in this game as well. Hoshino appears in the game as the musician, but also many of his songs are available in the music player, and you can unlock a dance number with him and Dollman in the private room to his song Horizon Dreamer, which I haven't been able to get out of my head since playing this game. Most of his songs are catchy pop hits, bubbly and bright, some leaning more into the somber, wistful side. They are generally simple, but a great example of some really punchy and funky pop tracks. Scottish synth-pop band Churches makes their return from the first entry, also appearing as the researchers in the Animal Center. Their track Death Stranding from the first game shows up here, but their song Nightmares from their 2021 album Screen Violence makes an appearance as well, a more heavy track that feels like pop rock more than anything. London-based singer-songwriter Koichi Yamanoa, also known as Grim Grim, shows up here as well. The song Cliffhanger almost feels like it was meant to be in a Death Stranding game, a beautiful indie song scored by its simple acoustic guitar backing with some sort of delayed echo effect going on. You can almost picture the artist sitting on a lonesome chair in an empty room, singing. Magnolian has a few songs on the soundtrack, an indie folk singer-songwriter named Dulgun Bayasgalin, a name I'm probably absolutely butchering. Somber lyrics on geese eventually softly crescendo into a beautiful chorus, a song about running away, a song about longing, a song about memory. The lyrics beautifully construct a world that pops up right in your mind as you're listening, stripped back and gorgeous. Perhaps the artist that appears the most on the licensed tracks, though, and the one that makes the most sense, is Low Roar. Low Roar was a post-rock band from Iceland, founded by Ryan Karaja. The band was heavily featured in the first game and honestly put a lot of people that I knew onto the band. Sadly, in 2022, Karaja tragically passed away at the age of 40. Their inclusion here feels like not only an extension of the tone that the first game was going for, but also a touching tribute to the man that created the project. The end credits even feature a dedication to the band. All of these projects feel scattered apart, coming from different places in the world, from different genres, but none of their songs ever feel like they don't fit the moment they are used. The music here is just as important as the game itself. Kojima is just as big of a fan of music as he is movies and games, so these things are important. Many of these tracks color our experiences in Death Stranding too. They are collective moments that we share. No matter what path you took during a certain mission, no matter if you were on foot or if you took a vehicle, we still heard the same song. The music connects us, and the game itself connects a lot of these projects together, a collective tissue that brings people into one medium like none other could. Back on the beach, the president asks Die Hard Man where he is, and we shift back to the DHV Magellan, where he appears in the flesh.
It's me, Sam. Alive and kicking. I'm not called Die Hardman for nothing.
This ends episode 12 and begins episode 13, Die Hard. Die Hard Man had everyone fooled, even A-Pass. The new Cupid for Drawbridge was designed specifically to restrict the flow of information, so A-Pass never really had all the details. Die Hard Man was involved from the beginning, contacting Tarman to create the Magellan. And Die Hard Man takes a look straight at the camera and tells the audience that DHV also stands for Die Hard Man's Vessel. APAC had contacted Lochna to develop the Cupid, one that could eventually be used to control humanity. Lochna refused, but Die Hard Man told her to take the job. They essentially wanted to create a Cupid that could sever connections as well as create them. It would sever the connections that their servers had with the dead. Die Hard Man starts waking up the members of Drawbridge one by one. He talks about what it means to be human, because by making this decision, they have determined that they will never be rid of the Death Stranding, not entirely. But this is human nature, to struggle, to explore, to face the adversity head-on, without sacrificing the freedom of the flesh. Humanity will continue to use A-Pass, but since it will be disconnected from the Beach of 4,000 Souls, it will just be a tool. Die Hard Man activates the Cupid and expels the president from the ship. Die Hard Man then explains that he is sorry for keeping everyone in the dark. He didn't want to attract A-Pass's attention. The Red Samurai then arrives on board and summons Tar that immediately places Tomorrow in a Chrysalis, just like we found her. Deadman in Heartman's body tells them that he isn't in the suit anymore. Higgs reveals himself under the suit. He says that he's been puppeteering everything this whole time. He plans to access Amelie's beach and get revenge on her by setting off the last stranding. Sam thinks he won't be able to do this because he doesn't have a connection to her beach. Higgs reveals that he's talking about Tomorrow. She's an extinction entity herself, and the big reveal that she is Sam's daughter. He learns this just as she's stripped away from him, taken into the tar. He tells Sam that they'll be waiting on the beach, and the crew discusses their options on the bridge. Fragile quickly confirms what Higgs said. Tomorrow and Sam's DNA matches up. When Sam was a member of Bridges, he had to provide a sperm sample, since he had Dooms. Tomorrow could have been conceived without his involvement, the first child born to a repatriate. If this is true, then Higgs can trigger the last stranding. Fragile decides that she's going to try to jump them to the beach, the entire ship. Even though she has jump shock, she wants to push through anyways. They decide to use the quipu that Amelie was wearing as a connection to jump to her beach, but this means heading back to Sam's shelter. Obviously, a difficult memory awaits for him there. This ends episode 13 and begins episode 14, Last Stranding. But of course, the tar currents have been disrupted once again, and Sam is going to have to travel back to the shelter on his own. This means one more long, final trek all the way from Terminal Fort Knott to Mexico. On the way, we are advised about the being causing the disturbance in the currents. When we get to Mexico, we are greeted by a massive chiral crab BT. We have to defeat this boss, damaging its legs and avoiding its large claw swipes, its venomous spit, and the summoning of huge swaths of jellyfish. It's pretty difficult, but nothing that we can't handle given the arsenal that we've amassed by this point in the game. Sam eventually reaches his shelter and finds the place completely put together. His record player is casting music throughout the place once again. Sam is clearly hallucinating because he sees Lou still alive in various places around the room. Of course, Lou isn't actually here, but Sam eventually finds the picture of him and Amelie from the first game, a proper item that will provide a connection to Amelie's beach. As he leaves, we see the shelter behind him, a terrible mess, just like he had left it before. We then head to the bridge and the crew gets ready to depart. Because they are trying to jump so many people to the beach at once, the journey will be particularly difficult on Fragile, but since the crew members have Dooms, their presence will all lighten the load. Fragile needs a good connection with Sam to make this jump though, and of course, they finally kiss. As they do, we see the crew members in the tar, every single one of them surrounding Sam and Fragile, assisting in this journey. We even see Dollman as he originally was, Lochna and Tarman's son. I think the point here is that these people, though not with the party physically, are important to them and help this journey come to fruition in the first place. They are effectively here in spirit, assisting the journey through time and incident. On the other side, the crew arrives on the beach, but Fragile isn't waking up. The jump took a massive toll on her body, but the ship has finally reached the beach, with the servers on the beach and the 4,000 souls stranded just above. Higgs and Tomorrow are here, as well as a ton of large BTs. Sam has to head out to finish this once and for all.
Be careful. And remember, I'll always be with you.
Before Sam leaves, he sees Amelie briefly on the ship and follows her out the door. Before we talk about the finale of the game, I'd like to talk about the character designs quickly for Death Stranding 2, because there's a lot here that we haven't really focused on. Fragile obviously looks a bit different than she did in the first game. She's now sporting a French beret, possibly signaling her new position as commander of Drawbridge, but she also has two chiral hands around her neck. These gloved appendages rest on Fragile's shoulders, and she can seemingly control them separately from her body. She can express other emotions, covering her mouth or lighting a cigarette while still using her real hands. Tarman, the pilot of the ship, wears a captain hat and a leather jacket, covered in mostly dark or black clothing. He resembles the tar himself. He seems as if he's covered in it, traveling through the substance for so long that it has stained him, become a part of him. Rainey is often seen sporting either a yellow turtleneck or a large Drawbridge orange jacket, both resembling the raincoat that we originally see her in. The color doesn't just reflect the literal interpretation of her reign and powers, but also the bright optimism and never-ending smile that we encounter throughout the game. Each new character in this game, including Tomorrow, is lovingly crafted. They are unique not just in the world of Death Stranding, but in the medium of video games as a whole. The characters are distinct from one another. Their clothing, outfits, and general demeanor set them apart. A mark of a good cast is one that can stand on its own visually. These characters tell you what you need to know just from looking at them. The Drawbridge crew is one of the highlights of the game, and each character, with their own backstory, abilities, motivations, and desires, are all connected as a piece of this ragtag family, but they all fulfill their own roles in this dynamic as well. As Sam heads out of the ship, we end episode 14 and begin episode 15 on the beach. We immediately see that the DHV has gotten some massive upgrades, and Die Hard Man goes into pilot mode. The ship is baiting the BTs in, shooting them with its huge cannons, flying BTs, the large hand BTs, and massive standing BTs that appear from out of the tar. They even link together to form giant Mechazord BTs with wings. The Magellan has to take evasive maneuvers to avoid their attacks, but it's eventually caught. Heartman asks Deadman to handle something for them, and they blast the BT's head that is holding them. Deadman appears inside of the BT, taking control of its body. This allows Heartman to control it and place the Magellan on top of its own body, fusing with the BT and creating a massive fighting machine. We then see the Magellan BT thing start using what sure looks like CQC on some of the other BTs. I've avoided talking about it for this long, but if you've ever played any of the Metal Gear Solid games, then you'll know that Death Stranding 2 is loaded with references to Kojima's previous series. Neil is probably the largest reference to the Metal Gear series, a character that appears wearing a very distinctive bandana and smoking a cigarette. He looks quite a lot like the Snake or Big Boss that we used to know. And Neil just so happens to be someone who specializes in sneaking around, but in a subversive twist, he isn't a spy or covert operator for the government, he is smuggling illegal goods into the country. The DHV Magellan, especially when equipped with its rail cannons, looks a lot like a Metal Gear, and just so happens to walk upright when placed on top of a BT. Tarman earlier in the game references the phantom pain that he feels when he lost his arm. The Red Samurai in the story sure seems a lot like the cyborg ninja from MGS, and turns out to be a previously dead friend of ours. Troy Baker voices Higgs, who also voiced Revolver Ocelot, and Higgs is now some sort of robotic construction that seems to be inhabited with Higgs' consciousness. When Sam is confronted by Higgs and forced to endure the torture of the flames put on his body, we play through a sequence that feels quite a lot like the microwave scene in MGS4. The ensuing fight that we're about to have with Higgs not only replicates the final fight from Death Stranding 1, but also seems a lot like the ending fight from MGS4. And it also contains that classic
"Kept you waiting, huh?"
Even the cover for the game looks like the more rare cover used for MGS2, and that cover almost looks exactly like Fragile holding Lou. The first Death Stranding game certainly contained some Metal Gear Solid references here and there, but it wasn't this overt. In some ways, this feels like it was directly because the first game was so influenced by Kojima's experience with the series and his time at Konami. It was autobiographical in a way. Death Stranding 2 doesn't seem like it's about the series as much, but it more feels like Kojima is saying that just because he doesn't own the rights to the Metal Gear IP doesn't mean that that series is not a part of what he creates in the future. How can you create a game that places such emphasis on community, the past, the actions you've taken, and not include references to the creator's original series? It seems all too poignant that Death Stranding is literally showing us characters from the first game that are not in this game to tell us that they still matter, that they still have weight. The message seems clear. Metal Gear is not gone. It will never be gone. Kojima created the series, and it will forever be woven into everything else that he makes. As we walk along the beach, we can see the Magellan fighting just in the background, but eventually we find Higgs in the samurai mech. We have our showdown with him, Sam armed with Higgs' chiral guitar, and Higgs armed with a massive samurai sword. We can shoot him with the guitar, but he will often block the shots. We have to pick the moments when he can't block, normally when he gets done with an attack or starts another one. It's a bit easier to fight him with melee attacks because we can dodge his swings and capitalize. Once we defeat him, the mech sinks into the water, and a giant column of light has formed in the sky. Higgs is sitting on the servers nearby, and he tells Sam that he's too late. Higgs almost looks melancholic, forlorn, and lost. The lighting in this scene is amazing. Higgs delivers this speech to Sam. He died on the beach and spent what felt like thousands of years wandering, without anyone, even the people he hated. He tried to take his own life, ready for the nothing, but 4,000 souls called him back. He decided to help them in their effort, but obviously had his own goals. As Higgs recounts these events, we see the lighting change in the background, reflecting the emotions that he's currently talking about. Day passes to night, the sunset begins, the rain starts. It's a gorgeous scene and maybe one of the best, most unique shots in the entire game. He means to bring about the Last Stranding, the same thing he couldn't do before. He's armed himself with another chiral guitar, one with 2 necks. We can shoot Higgs here in a pretty simple fight and hit him when up close, but we have to avoid all sorts of different attacks and anticipate his movements as he teleports around the stage. Every time we destroy one of these pillars, though, one of the 4,000 souls disappears from the ring above us. After we get him to about half health, he transports himself onto the hand of a large BT that starts knocking over pillars. And defeating him entirely, he transports onto the large fallen statue in the water. Higgs is bringing about the Last Stranding. As we watch the fabric of the beach begin to crumble, if he pulls this off, then he has completed his revenge against Sam as well. We then have our final fight against Higgs, the final boss of the game. This fight is obviously very reminiscent of the fight from the first game. Both characters have fighting-style health bars at the top of the screen, except this time we aren't beating each other with our fists, we're using guitars. This fight also feels a lot like the fight at the end of Metal Gear Solid 4, where Ocelot/Liquid and Snake fight on top of the Metal Gear. I mean, this is all to say that this fight is standard Kojima and honestly just makes sense for the finale of this massive game. In the middle of the fight, the two even have a guitar solo off. The two beat the hell out of each other until only one of them is left standing. Sam stands victorious over Higgs, but the fabric of the world is about to crumble, creating the shape of a hand in the tar. Tomorrow is cast into the sun, but something else happens in her wake. A giant baby pops out of the tar. It's Lou, now massive and casting a shadow over the two men. Higgs tries to sing BB's theme to calm her down, but Lou picks him up and eats him, spitting out his gold mask before giving Sam a thumbs up. The BTs around the Magellan cease to function and Lou flies off into the crack in the tar. Sam sees Amelie and Fragile, who is now gray-colored. She delivers a baby to Sam's feet, and Amelie hugs Sam one more time before pushing him into the water. This ends episode 15 and begins episode 16 tomorrow. We see Sam sitting on that same cliff that he has been time and time again. But this time, he has Lou in tow. Something is different though, because the area around us is floating with chiral energy. We have one more mission, to head back home, just as we did at the beginning of the game. Sam treks through the snow-covered Mexico, but when he gets home, he sees the Magellan and realizes it was all a dream. He wakes up on the beach, finding Tomorrow unconscious in front of him. He brings her aboard the Magellan, but finds some bad news awaiting him. Fragile is dead, and she didn't just die while Sam was fighting Higgs. She's technically been dead since she and Lou were attacked. She tried to jump them out, and being that she was in the space between the living world and the dead, taking the bullet actually killed her. But since time flows differently in these two worlds, her body continued to exist, while her soul had already gone to the beach. She knew she was already dead, and she didn't want Sam to know. She wanted to protect him and didn't want to bring any more grief into his life when he couldn't handle it. We then hear Fragile's voice as she admits what happened to her to Sam. The fact that they jumped in the first place wasn't Fragile's doing. Lou jumped them to the beach, and she left Lou in the care of the souls on the other side. She couldn't remember this after the incident. She thought Lou was dead the whole time. Once they got to A-Pass's beach, the memories came flooding back to her.
I can't give you back the time you've lost. But promise me you'll make the most of your future. With Lou. You will never be alone. Death can't tear us apart.
Sam then heads to the bridge, where the crew makes their journey back home. On the way, we see Neil is present in the Doom's Helpers circle. We see another memory of his, speaking to Lucy. She told him that Bridges was after her child, that they wanted to use it as a sacrificial BB for Bridges. She told him about the plan to tell everyone that he was the father, but she also wanted his help to get her out of there. He meant to use his routes to Mexico to get her out of the country. Before he left, she gave him the necklace USB file that contained all of the data on what Bridges had done. Neil showed up later to retrieve her, bringing her some flowers. On the way out, though, the two were caught by Bridges. The man that was forcing Neil to smuggle bodies into the country were onto the plot. They needed to use Lou for testing, so they hunted them throughout the facility. They shot Lucy in the process, and Neil was forced to take a deal to let them take the child, as long as they could save Lucy. Before he could agree, though, he was shot and killed. We then see Neil's body after he's already died, and how he necrotized very quickly. He became a BT and caused the void out that happened when Sam came to see Lucy's body. We originally thought the void out happened because of Lucy's BT, but we now learn it was really Neil. This is why the three have such a shared connection in the first place. We then see Lou crying in some place on fire, the shot we've seen since the beginning of the game. We watch as Fragile, her soul at least, arrives to pick Lou up and take her to the flaming streets with the lost souls. They took her and raised her, and since time flows differently in this world, she aged much faster. She eventually became the Tomorrow that we see now. Neil served as her protector in this world, protecting her even after his own death. She was an extension of Lucy, of the woman he loved, the only remaining piece of her that was left. The crew then arrives back home, out of the beach, and some flying adult cryptobiotes wake them from their slumber, their purpose seemingly revealed. Sam gets up with this new world in his view now. Lou remembers everything, and he gives her a hug.
I remember now. The journey the two of us went on together. You and me, Sam.
No.
We will always be connected.
We then see a quote from Kobo Abe's In Search of the Present. Though the future is a product of every present that precedes it, tomorrow does not belong to today. As the credits roll, we see various shots of the environments, creatures running across the wilderness, and that same familiar shot that we've seen of Sam all along, except that now it's tomorrow. She's equipped with porter gear, and she's smoking a cigarette, taking something from each of the men that served as her fathers. She's looking at pictures of Sam and her mother, of her time at Drawbridge, and of Rainey and her now born child. She carries these photos in a BB pod on her chest, serving at this point as mostly a ceremonial piece of equipment rather than a functional one. As this scene plays, we hear Lou's voice narrate the same lines that Fragile did at the beginning of the game.
Death can't tear us apart.
Lou has become a porter and is heading into one of the Australian plate gates, assumingly to connect further continents to the chiral network. After the credits play, we see Sam's shelter once again, various shots of a populated home, and a final shot of the BB pod, filled this time with apples. This ends episode 16 and begins episode 17, One Day. While not an official episode of the game, this section lets us wander around in the post-game world for as long as we want to, cleaning up any loose ends and completing things we missed along the way. I'd like to take this time to talk about what this all means. It's enough to say that this game is unique, that it is unlike anything I've ever played before, but what I'm more interested in is what Kojima is trying to tell us at the end of the day. Death can't tear us apart. This line is uttered many times throughout the course of the game, mostly by Fragile, but by other characters as well. It is first said in episode 9 when Sam is finally forced to face the truth, confronted by the fact that Lou is no longer with him. But it is also said in the final few chapters by Fragile, Tomorrow, and even Deadman when we realize that he is still alive. This statement is very probably a reference to the Joy Division song Love Will Tear Us Apart, as Kojima is a very big fan of the band and wrote at length about them in his book. But this statement itself is very literal and an extension of the general theme that this game is going for. Death can't tear us apart isn't just a soothing thing that people say to Sam, it's a rallying cry and motto for the game. Deadman is the first character that effectively dies in the sequel, but we learn later that he isn't truly dead. He's operating from the beach and assisting the team. Lou, the largest effective death in the game, isn't really dead or gone. She was trapped in another beach or reality or dimension for some period of time. Heartman is a character that has been dying since the first game, repeatedly, but he uses this as a tool to map the beach. Death is but a mere opportunity to gain more information for him. Even Higgs dies in the first game and comes back in the form of a ghost mech to haunt Sam and Fragile. Neil is dead, but he still impacts our story, giving Sam vital information which colors his view of his past and story. Sam is the final example of this. He is a repatriate, and he can die over and over again, but he always comes back. Hell, even the 4,000 souls caught in the Void Out ended up on the beach, assuming some sort of role, whether passive or active, in the narrative down the line. Death Can't Tear Us Apart becomes a literal statement in the narrative of the game. Death does not mean that it's the end for that person in this world or in the story of Death Stranding 2. Characters that we thought were dead literally come back, meaning that death cannot tear them apart. Now this, in my opinion, does not mean that there is no permanence to death in this game. The entire theme is placed intentionally in the game as a moral, a message, a furthering of the thesis that the game is trying to present. Remember back to the scene where the crew of the Magellan is trying to jump to the beach. Every person that has helped the expedition is present here. Even if they are not physically on the ship, they are here in spirit. This extends to death as well. Just because someone has passed away, or if you want to take the metaphor route, is not here right now, doesn't mean that they don't have an effect on your life. In fact, these people all made you who you are today. They enabled you to get to where you are now. But the quote at the end of the game also presents the other side of this theme. Though the future is a product of every present that precedes it, tomorrow does not belong to today. Though our past is an important factor in exactly what happens now, this doesn't mean that your own destiny is not yours to create. This is present nowhere clearly than in the shoe game scene with Rainy and Tomorrow.
But deep down in my heart, it's really sunny.
We have to understand that this quote-unquote death is not the end, but we also have to understand that the past does not define us. Both of these things can exist at the same time. They can both be true. You can be the master of your own destiny, but also understand that the connections you've made along the way helped you get to where you are. When I play Death Stranding 2, I can't help but think about the real world. In part because while writing and making this video, the world has seemed to expedite its collapse by years in a matter of days. but also because this game has so many themes baked into it that translate directly to our modern climate. Maybe I'm falling for the same trap that I criticized many for in seeing the forest for the trees with Metal Gear Solid 2, but I can't help but note Kojima's insistence on the two-sided violence and weapon wielding, the narrative focus on people in power secretly forcing two sides to fight, and then arming those sides so that they, like Higgs talked about in the beginning of the game, created a world where violence is king. But in a game and system that punishes the player for going out of their way to commit violence. True violence, not the knocking out of hostiles that are stealing packages, taking the life of another. This isn't the first time that Kojima has punished the player for violence in his games. It happened in Death Stranding 1, and every Metal Gear game has had a similar message to some extent. The Sorrow fight in MGS3, the Horns in MGS5, etc. At the same time, the game seems to have a lot to say about technology. The automated public assistance company seems to be an allegory for modern tech companies, their control over politicians and governments in the interests of the people. What is essentially a tech company eventually determines what is best for people. It makes this decision based off of a complete misunderstanding of the true will of the people and then operates to further that will. But it isn't a mere misunderstanding, because when the president is confronted with this, he doesn't just stop. It's that they think this is what's best for the people of this world. There's also through lines of AI and how it's wielded, a powerful tool that essentially has the ability to cut down communities, nations, and fundamentally change art as we know it, but in the wrong hands, it's a bomb, ready to bring about disaster. Kojima said as much in an interview with Gene Park that released as I was editing this video. This democratizing of art has empowered the individual, but also burdens audiences with even greater responsibility to become wiser and smarter. We need to educate ourselves on how to live as a new kind of human in this era of information overload. That will be the challenge. AI may not only provide the information, but also play a role in that education. Only those who can correctly process the information and make use of these experiences will truly thrive in the 21st century. A world that is divided, stranded, and controlled is not that different from the one that Kojima and his team try to paint on the screen. So what is the prescription? The only way out seems to be connection. The only thing that Sam and his friends have in common is each other, the communal bonds, the people you share, the memories, the moments, the feelings. It is essentially the ultimate touch grass video game, because the only way they get through the conflict is by growing stronger together as people. In that same article, Gene Park quotes Metal Gear Solid 2 to note Kojima's current pondering on the insistence of the individual, and I don't think that there's a more fitting prescription than the one that Kojima gave us almost 25 years ago.
Through speech, music, literature, and movies, what we've seen, heard, felt, anger, joy, and sorrow. These are the things I will pass on. That's what I live for. We need to pass the torch and let our children read our messy and sad history by its light.
Hideo Kojima spent most of his career attempting to pass the torch to the next generation. This was mostly the entire point of Metal Gear Solid 2. He didn't want to make Metal Gear Solid 3. He wanted to work on something else. The final scene in that game illustrates this pretty clearly. Take the things you make and hand them off to the people that are next up. Teach them the things you've learned, make things better for them. In a lot of ways, Death Stranding 2 feels quite a lot like Metal Gear Solid 2. It's a game that probably won't be truly appreciated for years because it is so intentionally similar to the first entry in the series. It's an upgraded version of the previous game, doing almost everything better, but clearly introducing some more complex themes and using that motif of recurrence to comment on some modern-day issues and society at large. The only difference is that now, Kojima isn't trying to pass the baton. He has a new strategy. He eventually learned that it was impossible to get another team to make a Metal Gear game. After being brought back in to help the development of, and eventually just make, Metal Gear Solid 3, being once again forced to come back to the series to develop MGS4, and finally being ousted from the company after developing MGS5. I think that Kojima realized that you can't just pass the baton. You can't ask someone to create the same things that you have. You can't ask someone to recreate your style. Creating art takes time, not just in perfecting the skill, but also finding your own voice and realizing what you want to create. People devote their lives to specific disciplines. Video games take even longer than other mediums, most spending years working on one project. Imagine Kojima leaving a project and telling the people working on the next game that they need to devote their lives, their craft, to recreate this style. This is obviously why Kojima has been very weary about saying if, once he heads off to go work on OD and Physint, Koji Pro will be making a Death Stranding 3. Kojima, in his own words, does not want people to make a Hideo Kojima game. He doesn't want to pass the baton anymore. He wants to inspire people, to light flames that will influence people to create new, unique pieces that they want to create. They are called to create these things because the fire inside them is burning so bright that it has to come out. In this way, Death Stranding 2 succeeds. It is a major success, an incredibly unique piece of media, unlike anything I've ever played aside from maybe Death Stranding. It is at once this beautiful new work of art, but also an amalgamation of Hideo Kojima's career, a self-reflective retrospective on the work that he has done so far. It is maybe the most deserving of the title, a Hideo Kojima game, because it feels like the DNA of everything Kojima has created has all been spliced together into this one piece. It is really difficult for me to criticize media like this because I am so incredibly biased. I love Kojima's work. He's one of my favorite game directors, and the Metal Gear series is my favorite series of all time. When a creator puts so much of themselves in a game, you can't have an experience that isn't personal with it. Because of this, I can only give you my experience with Death Stranding 2. At many different times in my life, I felt like I didn't really belong. Hell, even today, I still feel that to some extent. It's hard for me to feel like I'm really truly part of a group, like I have some home that I can always return to. It can be easy for me to get lost in this idea, this sort of self-imposed isolation, to feel like I'm wandering alone in a world, just delivering cargo. But Death Stranding 2 successfully reframes this issue. The idea that even when alone, the people that have been with you are still with you, no matter what, is a loud but comforting one. Kojima has a pretty distinct way to get this idea across, one that is influenced by a million different things: American cinema, Japanese animation, singer, songwriter, indie music. No one is making anything like Kojima. And I totally empathize with people that just don't enjoy his work and don't think he's as good as he's made out to be. But to me, he represents one of the last unique game developers out there that's still trying to push interesting ideas in the AAA space. And sometimes I do get worried that Kojima's time in the game industry will come to an end soon. He's currently working on his survival horror project for Xbox titled OD, and after that is his action espionage Metal Gear influenced title, Physint, for PlayStation. But these games take quite a long time to make, and Kojima's getting older. The time might come when he has to take a step back from the games industry, when he can't produce another title that takes 5 years to complete. But that won't matter. The Metal Gear games will live forever. The Death Stranding games are immortal, and death can't tear us apart. Bye, Dad. Just wanted to give a massive shout out to everyone who supports me on Patreon. If you want to be a part of the awesome people on this list, then you can go to the link in the description and support the channel directly. It's only a few bucks a month and helps the channel keep going, even in the event that YouTube completely implodes. If you want to support for free, just give the video a like and subscribe to the channel, and also hype the video or something. Just one last thank you again for watching this video. This took me quite longer than I wanted to get it done, but there was honestly just so much to cover. This game is massive, and I'm sure I missed a few things here or there. Easter eggs or maybe some emphasis on the impact of a miscellaneous floating carrier skill or something. But I think at the end of the day, I got the points across that I wanted to. See you next time. Bye, Dad.